Sometimes the people we thought we left behind show up when we least expect it. Elon walked into the Palo Alto office with his usual brisk stride, the metallic hum of servers brushing past his ears like a whisper of unfinished thoughts. The sky outside was bruised, with the last remnants of twilight, a storm having just passed, leaving slick asphalt glinting faintly beneath the fading streetlights. He paused for a fraction of a second, noticing a faint reflection of himself in the glass, one he didn't immediately recognize. There was a tension he couldn't shake, as if someone or something had slipped into the room before he had. He remembered the day clearly. It had been 15 years ago, a day full of ambition and anger, when PayPal had barely survived the corporate chaos, and he had felt the world pressing against him from every angle. That memory had always been tucked away, like a photograph shoved under a mattress. But now, standing in the middle of the office, he realized it wasn't buried, it was alive. A soft creak echoed from the corner, where a vintage Tesla Roadster prototype sat, its polished frame glinting under the harsh LED lights. Elon's heartbeat picked up subtly, not from fear, but from recognition. He hadn't seen this prototype in over a decade, and yet here it was, perfectly placed as if someone had known he'd be walking in tonight. The scent of heated metal and leather filled the air. "Elon?" A voice broke the silence. Hesitant. Careful. He froze. The voice carried a texture, a warmth tinged with unease, that pulled at the edges of his memory. It was a voice from the past, the voice of someone who had once believed in him unconditionally, before the pressure, the betrayals, and the obsession with progress had changed everything. Turning slowly, he saw a man standing near the doorway, half-shadowed, hands tucked into his pockets. The face was familiar in the most impossible way, like a photograph from another life. "I didn't expect to see you here," Elon said finally, his tone measured, almost brittle. The man's lips tightened. "Neither did I," he replied, eyes scanning the room, as if searching for an invisible line that separated past from present. There was a long pause, heavy with words neither wanted to say but both knew needed to exist in some form. Elon's mind raced, revisiting old meetings, failed pitches, and conversations that had ended with doors slammed and trust fractured. There were debts, not financial, not entirely, but debts of attention, of honesty, of acknowledgement. He had been running so fast toward Mars, toward the electric future, that he had forgotten some of the people who had helped him survive Earth. The hum of the servers pulsed around them, almost like a heartbeat, and Elon could feel the room tightening with anticipation. He remembered a line he had once written on a napkin during those PayPal days. "Don't let the past dictate the future, but don't ignore it either." He had laughed at it then, calling it overly dramatic. Now, it rang with unavoidable truth. The man shifted, producing a folder from his coat pocket. The papers inside looked ordinary, but Elon knew better. Each one was a fragment of history, emails, contracts, notes scrawled in the margins of meeting agendas that Elon hadn't read or had dismissed. They were relics of ideas they had once shared, dreams that had been compromised or postponed, and Elon felt a strange tug of responsibility. "You've done a lot," the man said quietly, breaking the tension. "But some things can't be built with rockets alone." Elon's throat tightened. He recognized the subtle reproach in the voice, but also the concern. It was not anger. It was a mirror reflecting choices and consequences, decisions he hadn't fully reconciled. He took a step closer, the polished floor creaking under his boots, feeling both the years and the immediacy of this encounter. The storm outside started again, rain pattering against the large glass panes, creating a rhythm that matched the pulsing tension in the room. Elon could almost hear the echo of footsteps from his past, silent but insistently present. He wondered how much time had really passed. 15 years? 20? And yet, some things had never changed. "Why now?" Elon asked finally, voice low but firm. The man's eyes met his, steady, unwavering. "Because some ghosts don't leave until you face them. The scriblash, well size, the scriblash, we ever seeing, the scriblash, the scriblash." Elon exhaled, a slow release of energy he hadn't realized he was holding. Memories surged, the late nights in cramped offices, the arguments, the laughs, the failures, the moments of brilliance that had seemed impossible at the time. It was a reminder of how fragile success had been, and how heavy the cost. He glanced at the folder, then back at the man. There was a quiet understanding that neither of them needed to speak aloud. Past mistakes, unresolved tension, and unfinished conversations weren't simply obstacles, they were lessons, waiting to be acknowledged. The air shifted again, and Elon noticed something small, a paperclip on the floor near the Roadster prototype. Bent, but perfectly intact. He picked it up, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. It was absurdly mundane, yet in that moment it symbolized everything: connections, overlooked details, and the persistent weight of memory. "Let's sit," Elon said, gesturing toward the conference table. "We need to talk." The man nodded, and as they both sat, the rain outside intensified, drumming a hypnotic cadence against the glass. The office felt suspended between past and present, every shadow and reflection magnifying the quiet gravity of the moment. Elon's mind churned, balancing the urgent pull of his current projects with the undeniable presence of history in front of him. Words began to flow, carefully chosen, tentative at first. They revisited old plans, clarified misunderstandings, and confronted grievances long buried. Each revelation was like striking flint. Sparks flew, sometimes startling, sometimes illuminating, but each one necessary to light the way forward. The man leaned back, eyes scanning Elon with something that felt like both relief and caution. "You've changed," he said softly. Elon paused, considering. He had changed, yes, but perhaps not in the ways he always intended. He had built rockets, electric cars, and a network of ideas that stretched across continents. But he realized some of the hardest things to construct were relationships, trust, and accountability. "I have," he admitted, "but I'm still trying to understand what matters most." There was a pause, filled only by the steady hum of machines and the rhythmic tapping of rain. Elon realized that facing this ghost from his past wasn't just a confrontation, it was an opportunity, a chance to reconcile, to remember what had been left behind, and perhaps to reclaim some small piece of himself he hadn't realized he'd lost. The man closed the folder with a soft snap, a finality that felt surprisingly comforting. "Then, maybe this is the right time," he said, "for both of us." Elon nodded, feeling the weight of years settle into a strange clarity. For a man who had spent so long racing against time, the quiet gravity of this moment, the presence of someone from his past, the echo of choices, the small but significant objects scattered around him, was a reminder that some journeys weren't about speed or technology. They were about understanding, connection, and the courage to face what had been left unresolved. Outside, the storm was ebbing. The wet streets reflected the soft glow of streetlights, and the city seemed to breathe with a calmer rhythm. Inside, the office remained charged, alive with unspoken truths, memories, and the subtle possibility of reconciliation. Elon glanced at the Roadster once more, the prototype gleaming faintly, a symbol of the past meeting the present. He took a deep breath. The encounter was over, yet its impact was just beginning to ripple through his thoughts, his plans, and his understanding of what it truly meant to move forward without leaving pieces of oneself behind. And for the first time that evening, Elon felt a quiet certainty. Facing the past wasn't weakness. It was preparation for the future. The hardest conversations often come from the people who once believed in you most. Elon leaned back, the chair creaking under the subtle shift of his weight. Outside, the rain had slowed to a soft drizzle, but the office felt alive with an electric tension that no storm could dilute. The man across from him, James, he remembered the name now, watched him carefully. His hands folded over the edge of the folder, knuckles pale under the overhead lights. The air smelled faintly of ozone, metal, and coffee, ordinary, yet strangely charged. "You know," James began, voice measured, "it's strange seeing all this success." He gestured to the prototypes, the walls lined with concept boards and framed patents. "You've built an empire from scraps, from chaos, from every chance no one else thought you deserved." Elon let the words hang, tasting them for truth. Success was a strange companion. It demanded sacrifice, but its rewards were often cold. "I know," he said finally, "and sometimes I wonder what I left behind, chasing it." James's eyes softened. "Exactly." There was a brief silence, filled only by the subtle hum of servers and the soft tapping of rain against the glass. Then, almost imperceptibly, James shifted in his seat, producing a small notebook from his jacket. He flipped it open, revealing pages of meticulous notes, scribbles, and calculations. I kept this, he said, voice low, because some of what we built together, it deserved more than just being forgotten. Thanks for watching. Elon felt the past stir within him, the adrenaline of late nights, arguments about design choices, and moments when failure felt inevitable. He remembered coding bugs that seemed unsolvable, investors pulling out at the last second, and the endless friction of trying to turn ideas into reality. That was the world they had shared, a world of grit and brilliance. And in that notebook, James had preserved fragments of it all. Why now? Elon asked again, his tone gentler this time. Why bring it back? James leaned forward, eyes locking with his. Because some things can't just be archived. They need acknowledgement, closure. The words hit harder than Elon expected. A subtle tightening in his chest reminded him that behind every invention, every launch, every headline, there were people who had shared the risks and the triumphs, and some of them had been left behind, not intentionally, but by the velocity of ambition. He glanced at the notebook. On one page, there was a sketch of the original Tesla Roadster, annotated with corrections and enhancements James had suggested, most of which Elon had implemented. On another page, there were financial projections, now laughably modest compared to the empire Elon had built. And then, buried between pages of formulas, a brief, handwritten note. Never forget the people who got you here. Elon's throat tightened. The weight of the note wasn't about guilt, it was about responsibility. He had always focused on the next project, the next breakthrough, the next frontier. But in doing so, he had sometimes ignored the people who had paved the way. James spoke again, softer this time. I'm not here to lecture. I'm here to remind you that the foundation matters as much as the summit. Elon nodded, absorbing the gravity in James's words. I get it, he said, quiet but firm. And thank you for keeping this, for reminding me. Another pause settled over the room. Elon's eyes wandered to the Tesla prototype in the corner. Its gleaming metal reminded him of nights spent arguing over every detail, every screw, every innovation. He realized that success was only meaningful if it carried the memories, the lessons, and the people who had built it with him. James closed the notebook, the snap of the cover echoing like a punctuation mark in the room. So, he said, what now? Elon considered it, tapping his fingers on the table. Now, he said slowly, we make sure it's not just the machines that carry our legacy, but the people too. The man across from him nodded, a subtle smile breaking through the tension. For a moment, it was just them, two men connected by the same past, standing in the quiet after a storm. Outside, the drizzle softened further, and the city's lights reflected off the wet streets in muted gold and silver. Inside, the office felt different, lighter, sharper, and alive with the subtle promise of reconciliation. Elon could feel the burden of years lifting, replaced with a clear determination to honor not just the future he was building, but the history that had led him here. Elon exhaled, slow and deliberate. He had faced one of the ghosts of his past, and it hadn't been about fear or regret, it had been about understanding. And understanding, he realized, was the foundation of every future endeavor, no matter how grand. Let's go over the plans, Elon said, nodding toward the boards filled with blueprints and projections. We have work to do. James leaned in, eyes focused. Together? Elon paused, and then a genuine smile cracked his usual reserve. Together, he affirmed. The rain outside slowed to a drizzle, the hum of the servers pulsed steadily, and the office, once a space of achievement and solitude, felt alive with renewed purpose. Two men, tied by history, looking forward to shaping the future, aware that some of the most important inventions weren't built with tools or machines, but with trust, accountability, and shared vision. As they bent over the blueprints, tracing lines and discussing projections, Elon felt the strange relief of closure, the subtle thrill of rediscovery, and the quiet knowledge that the past, when faced, could illuminate the way forward in ways he had never imagined. The night deepened outside, but inside the office, every shadow and reflection whispered of possibility, of connection, and of the fragile, precious balance between ambition and humanity. Elon glanced at the Tesla prototype once more, then at James, and for the first time in years, he felt entirely present, grounded in reality, yet propelled forward by the ghosts of his past, now transformed into guides rather than burdens. Sometimes progress demands not just vision, but reflection on who we've become. Elon stood by the glass wall overlooking the city, the drizzle of the morning rain leaving streaks that mirrored the patterns of thought running through his mind. The office behind him was quiet now. James had left an hour ago, leaving only the soft hum of servers and the subtle scent of coffee lingering in the air. But the encounter still pulsed through Elon like an unshakable echo, each memory and insight reverberating against the walls of his consciousness. He thought about the Roadster prototype, its polished metal gleaming under the diffused light, and remembered the nights spent arguing over every curve, every engineering challenge, every possibility. Success, he realized, wasn't just about speed or rockets or headlines. It was about the meticulous accumulation of effort, attention, and human connection. And more importantly, it was about remembering the people who had shaped that journey, whether they were still present or long gone. A subtle creak from the floor reminded him of his footsteps, heavy with reflection. He paced slowly, hands in pockets, tracing invisible patterns across the polished surface of the room. He considered the upcoming Mars project, the advances in Starship propulsion, the global rollout of Tesla energy initiatives. Each plan seemed monumental, almost overwhelming, but now he viewed them through a lens sharpened by confrontation with the past. Elon's mind wandered to the countless decisions he had made in the last decade, the compromises, the shortcuts, the moments when ambition had eclipsed empathy. He remembered the strained conversations with team members who had left, feeling unheard or undervalued. He recalled missed opportunities to acknowledge contributions, to nurture relationships that could have flourished alongside the technological achievements. His phone buzzed, vibrating softly on the table. It was a message from one of the engineers on the Starship team, detailing minor setbacks in a propulsion module. Normally, such updates would trigger immediate action, a flurry of meetings and emails. But today, Elon felt something different. He realized that leadership wasn't only about reacting, it was about understanding the human rhythm behind every technical problem. He opened a notebook, jotting down thoughts in a hand that had become accustomed to speed and precision. Measure impact, not just in launches, but in lives touched. Accountability, not just ambition. The words felt heavier than any technical calculation, more consequential than any patent or headline. A faint hum of the servers deepened, a motif of continuity and persistence. Elon closed his eyes briefly, letting the sound anchor him. He could still hear James's voice, calm but insistent. Some things can't just be archived. They need acknowledgement, closure. Those words had reshaped the way he saw every project, every team member, every challenge. He recalled a small detail James had pointed out, an overlooked note in the early Roadster sketches suggesting a design tweak that had seemed trivial at the time. Elon smiled faintly. It wasn't the technical insight that mattered now, it was the principle it represented. Paying attention, honoring contributions, and weaving human care into every creation. The city beyond the glass glimmered with the reflections of early morning lights. Muted by the rain-soaked streets, Elon felt a strange blend of urgency and calm. He needed to accelerate projects, push toward Mars, expand Tesla's impact. But he also recognized the necessity of pausing, of embedding reflection into action. Progress without reflection, he realized, risked repeating past mistakes. A soft knock on the office door broke his reverie. One of his senior engineers stepped in, careful, respectful, but carrying a subtle tension of his own. Elon, the Starship launch sequence review is ready, the engineer said, voice low. Elon nodded, gesturing for him to continue. Let's walk through it, he replied. But as they moved toward the display screens and detailed schematics, Elon's thoughts lingered on the lessons from James's visit. He guided the discussion with precision, but also with a new attentiveness, asking about team well-being, historical context for decisions, and whether lessons from previous prototypes had been fully integrated. The engineer noticed the shift. Elon's demeanor, normally all forward momentum, now carried a layer of reflection and care. Questions were not just technical, they were humane. Suggestions weren't just accepted, they were acknowledged for the minds and effort behind them. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but the room responded. Conversation flowed differently, more thoughtfully, more deliberately. Elon paused at one point, watching the engineers collaborate. He realized that innovation was not simply a product of genius, it was the careful orchestration of human potential. Each success, no matter how monumental, relied on unseen contributions, overlooked details, and the diligence of those who often went unrecognized. His phone buzzed again, another message, this time from James. Keep looking backward as you move forward. Small gestures matter. Elon smiled, the faint tension in his shoulders easing. It wasn't about guilt or recrimination, it was about recalibration, a reminder that the trajectory of progress was best measured by the people it lifted as much as by the milestones it achieved. The morning light shifted, cutting through the rain-streaked glass, illuminating the office in soft gold. Elon stood by the window, notebook in hand, tracing the patterns of his reflection. He felt grounded, aware, and strangely lighter. The ghosts of the past had not vanished, but they were no longer burdens. They were guides, nudging him toward a balance between ambition and humanity, between vision and care. He turned back to the team, voice calm but firm. Let's make sure every detail matters, he said, not just for efficiency, not just for technology, but for the people who make it possible. The engineers nodded, inspired not by fear of deadlines, but by recognition that their contributions were meaningful, remembered, and integrated into the larger vision. Elon felt the subtle pulse of progress, not just in machines or data, but in trust, accountability, and shared purpose. As the day unfolded, Elon moved through meetings, reviews, and project discussions with a new rhythm, one informed by past lessons, grounded in reflection, and propelled by an unshakable commitment to integrity. He realized that the most profound breakthroughs often weren't in new technology, but in understanding the human dynamics that made every technological leap possible. By late afternoon, the drizzle had stopped, leaving streets glistening in the fading light. Elon returned to the window, watching the city's pulse, feeling its quiet rhythm resonate with his own. The encounter with James, the reminder of neglected history, and the subtle but persistent lessons from the past had reshaped his approach. He thought again of the small paperclip, bent but intact, lying near the Roadster prototype, the quiet symbol of overlooked details that carried disproportionate significance. Elon understood now that success was measured not just in achievements, but in the care, acknowledgement, and consideration woven into every decision. For a man often defined by rockets, cars, and headline-grabbing ventures, the revelation was simple but profound. Moving forward required facing the past, honoring it, and letting it guide each step. The future, he realized, wasn't just about speed or scale, it was about balance, understanding, and the deliberate integration of human wisdom into the machinery of progress. Elon took a deep breath, letting the weight of this realization settle. The office felt quiet, yet alive, brimming with potential, memory, and purpose. And for the first time that day, he felt entirely aligned, not just with his ambitions, but with the lessons that history had etched into his path. As night approached, he returned to the Roadster prototype, running a hand along its polished surface. He smiled faintly, whispering under his breath, "Every detail matters, every person matters, every choice matters." And with that, he felt the past, present, and future converge, in a moment of clarity that no headline could capture, but one that would shape everything he built next. The real work begins when reflection turns into action. Elon stepped into the Tesla design studio, the smell of warm metal and fresh electronics mixing with the faint tang of coffee. Sunlight filtered through the high windows, cutting across sketches pinned on the walls, illuminating every line and correction. The studio was a hive of controlled chaos. Engineers bent over laptops, technicians adjusted prototype components, and the faint murmur of collaboration filled the air like an undercurrent of energy. He moved among them, hands in pockets, observing rather than dictating. The subtle shift from past days was almost imperceptible to the team. Elon's presence no longer carried the weight of relentless urgency, but instead an attentiveness that invited focus and creativity. At a workbench, a young engineer adjusted a suspension component. He glanced up nervously. "Elon." Elon smiled faintly, interrupting only gently. "Show me. Walk me through your thought process." The engineer's posture straightened. He explained, pointing to stress tests, materials, and calculations. Elon listened intently, asking precise questions, nodding, occasionally suggesting refinements, but never rushing, never dismissing. Every question Elon asked reflected not just technical curiosity, but recognition, a validation of effort, of thought, of dedication. A subtle hum from the prototype chassis under test created a rhythm in the studio, almost like a heartbeat. Elon paused to notice it, a reminder of the balance between machine and human oversight. He remembered James's words, "Small gestures matter." And in this moment, every nod, every follow-up, every acknowledgement was exactly that, an inflection point in the culture he was building. He moved toward the corner where the Roadster prototype stood, polished to a reflective sheen. A faint dent near the wheel arch caught his eye, a minor imperfection overlooked in earlier inspections. Instead of anger, Elon felt curiosity and responsibility. He crouched, examined the dent, then motioned for the lead technician. "This is subtle," Elon said quietly. "But it matters. Let's trace it back, why it happened, who was involved, and how we prevent it in future models." The technician blinked, a flicker of apprehension in his expression. But Elon's tone carried no blame, only purpose. "Accountability is not about punishment," he added. "It's about learning and precision." Was. As the technician explained, Elon's thoughts drifted briefly to his broader projects. Starship, Neuralink, Boring Company. The principle was consistent: attention to detail, respect for contributors, integration of lessons learned. Each enterprise, no matter how grand, depended on human dedication, as much as technological ingenuity. A notification pinged on his tablet. A video update from a Starship test flight. Elon leaned back, watching intently as the sequence played. Engines ignited, systems synchronized, modules separated. The data was promising, but something in the telemetry caught his eye, a recurring micro-fluctuation that could become critical. Rather than issuing an immediate command, he gathered the lead engineers. "Let's dissect this," he said, hands spreading across the table, tracing lines in the schematic. "Not just what's happening, but why. Step by step, every small factor counts." For hours, the team worked under Elon's guidance. He listened, questioned, and acknowledged, blending technical precision with human awareness. Ideas flowed more freely now. Engineers no longer feared correction, they sought insight, knowing that every detail mattered and that their contributions were seen. Around midday, Elon stepped aside, looking out the studio windows. The city stretched beyond, a lattice of streets and reflections of sunlight on wet pavement from the recent rain. The storm from the past, James, the unresolved tensions, the overlooked details had transformed into clarity and momentum. He realized leadership wasn't about constant forward thrust. It was about calibration, reflection, and tangible action. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was James again, holding another folder. Elon raised an eyebrow. "Back so soon?" James smiled faintly. "You've started, but I wanted to see how it looks in motion. Theory without action is just nostalgia." Elon nodded, appreciating the blunt truth. "You're right," he said. "And now, it's about implementation." James glanced at the team working around the studio. "They'll notice. Small shifts in approach make waves you can't always see immediately, but they will feel it." Elon watched a young engineer adjust a component, speaking up confidently where before he would have remained silent. He felt a quiet pride not in the technical fix, but in the atmosphere of trust, attention, and shared responsibility taking shape. "Change isn't just top-down," Elon said. "It's structural, cultural, subtle. Every acknowledgement, every question, every lesson, integrated, that's how you make it stick." James nodded. "You've learned that ghosts from the past aren't always obstacles. Sometimes they're reminders, paths toward better leadership." Elon reflected on that, letting it settle in the hum of machines and the soft cadence of conversation. He realized that the most profound transformations weren't in the rockets, cars, or tunnels, they were in the relationships. The attentiveness, the care embedded in every project, and the commitment to seeing the human element behind every achievement. As the sun dipped lower, golden light spilling across the studio floor, Elon returned to the Roadster, running a hand along its curved panel. The minor dent no longer felt like a flaw, it was a signal, a lesson, a trace of the human journey intertwined with every invention. He smiled faintly. Every small correction, every acknowledgement, every detail mattered. And in that quiet, golden moment, Elon felt fully present, aligned with past lessons, grounded in the present, and propelled into the future not just by ambition, but by awareness, responsibility, and respect for the people who made every breakthrough possible. The office settled into a calm rhythm, machines humming, engineers collaborating, ideas flowing. Elon exhaled, feeling a rare equilibrium. Action and reflection, ambition and empathy, the past acknowledged and the future firmly in motion. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of progress without losing sight of its meaning. Every choice mattered. Every person mattered. And the journey forward was no longer just about building remarkable machines, it was about building a legacy of care, attention, and human excellence. True leadership is tested not in calm, but in the eye of the storm. The early morning hum of the SpaceX launch facility was electric, a low-frequency vibration running through the soles of Elon's shoes. Rain from the night had left the tarmac slick, reflecting the towering starship in distorted streaks of neon light. Engineers scurried across the pad, raincoats flapping, tablets clutched like shields against chaos. Elon's gaze was steady, scanning telemetry readouts, scanning the team, but most importantly, scanning for what could go wrong. He felt a familiar tension coil in his chest, the subtle echo of every prior failure. But this time, the tension was tempered by something new. Awareness. He remembered James's words, the roadster dent, the small gestures that shaped culture, the painstaking attention to human detail. This was no longer just a launch. It was a crucible of leadership, testing whether reflection could survive real pressure. Engine Bay 2 is showing pressure oscillations, a lead engineer reported, voice tight but controlled. Elon walked closer, tracing the data points with his eyes. Magnitude, duration. His questions were precise, but calm. There was no panic in his voice, only a methodical insistence on understanding the system and the people operating it. Intermittent spikes. Could be a valve misalignment, another engineer said. He nodded. Check the previous test logs. Cross-reference with temperature. Variances. I want causes, not symptoms. Elon's fingers tapped lightly on the tablet, not in impatience, but in rhythm, a subtle signal of engagement and attentiveness. A gust of wind swept across the tarmac, rattling scaffolding and shaking tarps. The distant rumble of the city was swallowed by the roar of anticipation. Elon's mind flicked to Neuralink meetings, Tesla energy forecasts, boring company timelines, but here, at the Starship pad, focus was absolute. Each fluctuation, each data spike, carried immediate consequences. Minutes stretched, sweat gathered along the hairline at his temples. Engineers muttered theories, cross-checked data, adjusted parameters. Elon hovered nearby, not intervening unless necessary, letting the team's expertise surface while silently observing who stepped up, who hesitated, who faltered. Leadership, he realized, wasn't about doing everything yourself, it was about creating conditions for others to excel. A sudden alert pinged on the central monitor. An anomaly in the fuel feed system. A spike in pressure that hadn't appeared in simulations. Elon's jaw tightened. This could abort the launch. He exhaled, slowing the rising adrenaline, letting awareness guide action. Contain it, he instructed. Simulate all failure modes. Don't bypass any checks. The engineers moved in. Synchrony. Testing, adjusting, recalculating. Elon's presence was calm but precise, a guiding anchor amidst the potential chaos. He caught a glance from one young engineer, fingers trembling over the keyboard. Elon offered a small nod of reassurance. Trust yourself. You've prepared for this. The message wasn't verbal, but it landed like a lifeline. After tense minutes, the anomaly stabilized. Data confirmed. A minor valve misalignment caused oscillations, now corrected. Elon exhaled, a subtle release that no one but him noticed. Relief was tempered by reflection. Each near failure was an opportunity to test systems and people alike. Good work, he said finally, voice low but firm. Every detail counted. Every check mattered. Remember this moment. The engineers exchanged glances, absorbing both praise and responsibility. Elon stepped back, scanning the starship. Rain glistened on its steel frame, reflecting the morning light like a mirror of both ambition and human endeavor. He felt a pulse of something deeper than relief, pride tempered with accountability. The launch would proceed, but more importantly, the culture he was shaping, the insistence on human attention, careful observation, and shared responsibility, had been tested under real pressure, and it had passed. A subtle vibration ran through the pad, an echo from engines warming, a motif of anticipation. Elon's mind drifted briefly to the roadster dent, the small notebook, the conversations with James. Every lesson from the past had converged into this moment. Awareness, acknowledgement, trust, precision. Success, he realized, was meaningless without these foundations. The launch sequence continued, telemetry green across every critical metric. Elon watched silently, letting the storm of data, noise, and human energy unfold around him. Every heartbeat, every shuffling footstep, every quiet whisper carried significance. He felt alive in a way only moments of true stakes could deliver, a mix of fear, excitement, and profound responsibility. Minutes later, Starship ignited, engines roaring to life, fire and steam cascading across the wet tarmac. The ship lifted slowly, then faster, piercing clouds like a silver spear against the gray sky. Elon's eyes followed every movement, his mind cataloging every response, every adjustment, every variable accounted for. The launch went smoothly, flawlessly, but Elon didn't exhale immediately. He let the ascent unfold, observing the subtle oscillations, the faint mechanical hums, the interplay of pressure and control. Only when the craft disappeared into the clouds did he allow himself a quiet nod. Success had been achieved. Yes, but the real triumph was the synthesis of human focus, technical mastery, and learned awareness. He turned toward the engineers, eyes scanning each face. Today, he said, voice carrying both weight and warmth, we saw what attention to detail, trust, and preparation can accomplish. Remember this, every micro-choice counts. Remember this, every micro-choice counts. Every person counts. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky broke into patches of muted gold and gray, reflecting both storm and calm. Elon stood by the edge of the launch pad, feeling the damp wind against his face, grounding himself in the moment. Every lesson from the past, the ghosts, the mistakes, the small reminders had forged this clarity, this capacity to act decisively under pressure without losing sight of the human element. As the team began cleanup and debrief, Elon glanced at the distant horizon. Beyond the clouds, beyond immediate challenges, beyond the next rocket, there was a future now tethered to awareness, responsibility, and shared purpose. Every choice mattered, every person mattered. And for the first time in years, Elon felt not just the thrill of success, but the quiet, profound satisfaction of doing it right. Even after the storm, the quiet moments reveal the truths we often ignore. I think sir, the facility was emptying, the hum of machinery giving way to the soft shuffle of departing engineers. Elon lingered near the launch pad, the echo of Starship's ascent, still vibrating faintly in the steel under his feet. The sky above was a patchwork of clouds and sunlight, each beam falling unevenly across the wet tarmac, casting reflections like memories etched in liquid light. He ran a hand across the railing, tracing the cold metal, and let his mind wander. The launch had been a success, but more than that, it had been a proving ground not just for technology, but for the leadership he had cultivated over months of reflection and deliberate change. Each decision, each acknowledgement of his team's effort, each attentive question had shaped the outcome. Success, he realized, was not only about rockets leaving Earth, it was about people leaving fear behind and embracing responsibility. Elon's phone buzzed, another message from James. Moments like these are the proof, not the headlines, not the applause. You've changed the way you lead. Elon read it twice, letting the words sink. They were simple, yet carried the weight of accountability and trust. A bridge from past lessons to present action. He walked back into the control room, now quiet except for the faint hum of servers and the blinking of monitors. The engineers were gathered in small clusters, discussing observations, debriefing their experiences. Elon paused, observing, noting the subtle changes. Confidence in voices that once trembled. Initiative in hands that once hesitated. Collaboration in eyes that once avoided scrutiny. It wasn't the launch itself that would define them, it was this culture of careful awareness and mutual respect. Sitting down at a console, Elon opened his notebook. He began to write. Not technical specifications or future projections, but reflections. Progress isn't linear. Ambition alone can blind us. The people who build alongside us are as important as the machines we create. Attention, acknowledgement, and integrity define legacy. He paused, listening to the quiet, a soft vibration of air conditioning, the faint metallic creak of equipment settling, the distant murmur of the city beyond. For the first time, he realized how much silence could teach if one truly listened. Each subtle sound, each small movement, each overlooked detail held lessons waiting to be recognized. Later, in the solitude of his office, Elon reviewed the Starship telemetry. Engines performed as expected, but his attention lingered on minor deviations, small fluctuations that could be improved, optimized. He traced every anomaly, not just technically, but as a testament to human diligence, every adjustment a reflection of trust and teamwork. A knock at the door startled him briefly. It was a junior engineer, holding a tablet. Elon, I wanted to show you the data analysis from the test module. There are some patterns we didn't anticipate. Elon gestured for him to sit. Walk me through it, he said, voice calm but engaged. The engineer explained, highlighting small inefficiencies, subtle improvements. Elon asked questions, not to challenge, but to understand and empower. When the engineer finished, Elon nodded. Excellent. That attention will save time, resources, and mistakes in the future. Keep pushing, it matters. The engineer's shoulders relaxed. A small smile broke across his face, unspoken acknowledgement passing between them. Elon felt a quiet satisfaction. This was the tangible outcome of lessons learned from the past, applied in the present, shaping the future. As evening approached, Elon stepped outside again, the air cool and fresh after the rain. He looked at the city lights reflecting off the wet streets, at the vehicles moving below, and at the horizon where Starship had disappeared moments earlier. In that quiet, he realized how deeply personal achievement and professional responsibility were intertwined. Technology without attention to human dynamics was hollow. Ambition without reflection was fragile. His thoughts turned to his family, to personal relationships he had often sidelined. The past months had reminded him that closure and acknowledgement mattered not just for teams or projects, but for the people closest to him. A subtle pang of regret passed, but with it came resolve. Progress required balance, personal, professional, emotional. Elon exhaled slowly, letting the city's muted hum settle into him. He considered the Roadster prototype, the Starship pad, the engineers' faces, James's notes. All fragments of a past that had demanded attention, accountability, and care. They had led to clarity. That leadership, innovation, and legacy were inseparable from human connection and deliberate thought. He returned inside, lights dimmed low, and sat at his desk. He began drafting a note to his core team, reflecting on lessons from the recent launch, emphasizing trust, attention, and accountability. It was not a technical brief or corporate directive, it was a personal reflection intended to shape culture and mindset. The small gestures that James had insisted mattered so profoundly. Hours later, Elon looked out the window again. The city was quiet, shimmering under the glow of streetlights, wet and reflective, like a mirror of possibility. He felt an unusual serenity, the tension of ambition balanced by reflection, the burden of past ghosts transformed into guidance, the pressure of future challenges tempered by awareness. He whispered to himself, almost a vow, every choice matters, every person matters, every detail matters. I will remember, and I will act. The night deepened, but inside Elon's mind, clarity burned bright. He had faced challenges, confronted the ghosts of past oversights, and applied their lessons in real time, under pressure. He understood now that legacy was not simply measured by rockets, cars, or headlines, but by how attentively and humanely one led the people who made those achievements possible. The office fell silent. Elon stood, looking once more at the city, the lights shimmering in the puddles below. He felt present, aware, aligned. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in years, The future felt grounded in both ambition and integrity. And that, he realized, was the most powerful launch of all. Even the best-laid plans are measured by how we respond to the unforeseen. Elon arrived at the SpaceX headquarters earlier than usual, the crisp morning air biting faintly at his face. The city was still waking. Reflections of neon from streetlights lingered on the wet pavement, painting the streets with muted color. He felt the familiar mix of anticipation and unease that preceded major challenges, but today it was sharper. Something had gone wrong overnight, though the details were sparse. A senior engineer met him at the door, urgency in her eyes. Elon, there's a thermal anomaly in Starship's second stage. It wasn't in the simulations. Elon's chest tightened. He had trained himself to manage crises, but this was unexpected. A deviation outside calculations, outside predictability. The room itself seemed to shrink under the weight of responsibility. Every decision mattered. Every instruction could ripple into consequences measured in millions, maybe lives. He followed her into the control room, screens flickering with telemetry data. The anomaly was subtle, almost invisible at first glance, but persistent. Elon leaned forward, tracing lines with his finger. Magnitude? The engineer responded. Voice controlled but taut. Slight, but enough to cause cascading system stress. Could affect re-entry integrity if uncorrected. Endophore, when some way integrity if uncorrected. Elon nodded slowly. His mind raced, but he forced himself into calm observation. Panic accomplished nothing. He needed clarity, focus, and human coordination, the lessons he had painstakingly absorbed over the past months. Step 1, he said aloud. We verify the anomaly against real-time sensor arrays. Step 2, map all affected subsystems. Step 3, cross-reference with the team's past test modules. I want causes, not symptoms. Engineers moved quickly, tension coiling in the room. Elon walked among them, observing, listening to ideas, validating effort, noticing subtle cues in body language. He caught a glance from a junior technician, hesitating before suggesting a possible corrective approach. Elon inclined his head slightly, encouraging, signaling trust. Speak. We need you. Minutes passed in a blur of calculations, simulations, and debate. Elon asked precise questions, probing without commanding, guiding without dominating. Small decisions, whether to adjust a cooling valve, reroute sensor input, or recalibrate a subsystem, accumulated into a complex choreography of human and mechanical interaction. A sudden alert pinged. The anomaly intensified. The room stiffened. Elon felt a faint flash of anxiety, but it was tempered by awareness. He reminded himself, this is what reflection prepares you for. This is the test. Simulate a staged re-entry with corrected parameters, he instructed. I want predictive models for every scenario, and I want a fail-safe ready for manual override. The team worked with fevered focus. Elon paced slowly, observing, occasionally interjecting with a clarifying question or a minor suggestion, but always listening. The patterns emerging on the monitors were subtle yet revealing. He saw how trust and attentiveness transformed tension into constructive collaboration. Hours passed. Sweat gathered along foreheads and hairlines, fingers trembled over keyboards, and voices alternated between controlled calm and urgency. Elon remained grounded, a steady presence, reminding the team that meticulous attention and collective insight mattered more than individual brilliance. Finally, one engineer pointed to a subsystem adjustment that, if applied correctly, could stabilize the anomaly. Elon leaned over, scrutinized the data, and nodded. Yes. Implement with caution, but move swiftly. Document every step, and double-check every cross-link. The team executed, and slowly, the data began to normalize. The anomaly decreased, fluctuations diminishing. Relief rippled through the room, but Elon held a quiet, careful vigilance. Success had not yet been finalized. Confirmation required patience, thoroughness, and constant awareness. Eventually, the anomaly fully stabilized. Elon exhaled softly, the tension ebbing. He looked around at the team, faces flushed with exhaustion, but bright with focus and confidence. Their collaborative effort, guided by his leadership, had overcome the unforeseen. He stepped aside, observing the monitors, tracing every line and number with a thoughtful eye. The starship's systems were healthy, but more than that, the culture of attentiveness, accountability, and trust had proven resilient under extreme pressure. The lessons from past reflection had not only survived, they had thrived. Later, when the facility quieted, Elon found a moment alone. He walked to the small window overlooking the launch pad, now empty and glistening from morning dew. He reflected on the events of the past day, the anomaly, the team's response, the weight of responsibility. His internal dialogue was quiet, disciplined, yet profoundly introspective. This is the measure of growth. This is what leadership looks like when stakes are highest. A faint notification buzzed on his phone. James's message appeared. The true test isn't avoiding problems. It's seeing how your team responds when the unexpected strikes. Elon smiled faintly, reading the message twice. He knew now that leadership was not just about technical mastery, ambition, or bold decisions. It was about embedding reflection into action, trust into execution, and awareness into every choice. He opened his notebook and began jotting observations. What worked, what could improve, and how to maintain a culture of accountability and attentiveness even under unforeseen pressures. Each note was a seed, a future lesson, a blueprint for sustainable progress. As evening descended, Elon stepped outside once more. The wet tarmac reflected the dusky sky, the horizon stretching into shades of gold, gray, and deep blue. He breathed in the cool air, letting the gravity of the day settle into clarity. The storm had tested his team, his plans, and himself, and emerged as an unexpected affirmation. Growth is only validated through action under uncertainty, and leadership is only proven through the human connections it nurtures. Elon whispered under his breath, almost a mantra, every decision matters, every person matters, every anomaly is a lesson. The starship pad lay quiet in the fading light. Elon turned to leave, his steps measured, aware, and resolute. He had faced the unforeseen and through it, learned that reflection, when applied deliberately, was not just preparation, but the lifeline of progress, the anchor of trust, and the compass of legacy. Vision without reflection is ambition lost. Progress demands both. Elon stood on the balcony of his office late that evening, the city lights below, like a constellation of human endeavor, each flicker representing ambition, effort, and mistakes learned. The starship anomaly had been resolved, yet his mind was restless. Success in technology was fleeting. What endured was insight, understanding, and the ability to anticipate not just machines, but people. He sipped a cup of cold coffee, the bitter taste grounding him. The past weeks, the Roadster dent, the team's reactions, the Starship launch, the unexpected thermal anomaly had formed a lattice of lessons. Each event, small or large, had been a mirror, reflecting both strengths and blind spots. Leadership, he realized, was a constant negotiation between the urgent and the essential. A notification buzzed on his tablet, a reminder of Neuralink's upcoming trials. Elon frowned. So many ventures, so many challenges, each demanding precision, foresight, and human sensitivity. He felt the familiar pulse of tension, but it was tempered by a deeper awareness now. Panic no longer dictated action. Observation and structured thinking guided it. He walked back inside, passing the engineers who remained late, still refining data and running simulations. Some glanced up nervously. Elon offered a small nod, an acknowledgement heavier than words. It carried trust, respect, and a subtle lesson. Dedication and attention would always be seen. Even in exhaustion, even in minor contributions, every detail mattered. Elon opened his notebook, writing thoughts that were part technical reflection, part personal philosophy. Machines are precise, predictable, and blind. Humans are neither, but with care and attention, they can exceed expectation. Leadership is the bridge between these worlds. He paused, considering his own ambitions. SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, Boring Company, each enterprise was a monument to human ingenuity, But he realized that the real metric of success wasn't output or innovation alone. It was sustainability, the ability to cultivate culture, trust, and reflection under pressure. Without it, even the greatest inventions could falter. A soft knock interrupted his contemplation. James entered quietly, holding a folder. "You've done well," he said, voice calm. "But the real challenge isn't crisis, it's continuity. Maintaining focus, precision, and empathy when the storm is gone, when complacency can creep in unnoticed." Elon nodded, absorbing the words. He had seen the storm, the anomaly, the launch, the weeks of tension. But the quiet moments that followed revealed a different test. Whether the principles he had cultivated would persist in routine, whether attentiveness and care would survive once adrenaline faded. They walked together toward the conference room, reviewing telemetry, cultural notes, and procedural refinements. Elon listened carefully, asking questions that probed both technical precision and human dynamics. He noticed the subtle shifts: confidence in the junior engineers, clarity in leadership delegation, and engagement across the board. Progress was visible not only on screens, but in faces, posture, and collaborative energy. Later, alone again, Elon reflected on his personal life. He thought of family, of relationships often deferred for the sake of ambition, and of the subtle costs of relentless focus. Growth, he realized, wasn't simply professional, it was holistic. Attention to people, to moments, to small gestures of acknowledgement mattered as much as technical innovation. He stood by the window, gazing at the horizon where the first stars of night appeared, faint but steady. The lessons of the past weeks coalesced. Reflection must be constant, vigilance balanced with trust, ambition tempered by awareness. Progress required both action and insight, precision and empathy. And legacy would not be measured solely in achievements, but in how attentively one led the humans behind them. Elon whispered to himself, almost a mantra, "Every detail counts, every person counts. Every choice is a step towards something larger than ambition alone." The city lights flickered, rain from the earlier storm, casting silver reflections across the streets. Elon felt an unusual calm. The storm had tested him, the anomaly had challenged him, and the past had haunted him, but through reflection, attentiveness, and deliberate action, he had emerged more grounded, more aware, and more capable. He turned back to his desk, opening another notebook. Pages filled with technical notes, reflections, observations, and plans. Each word, carefully written, was a commitment to leadership, to responsibility, and to continuous improvement. Elon understood now that the greatest challenge was not simply to build, innovate, or conquer, but to integrate awareness and human insight into every endeavor. Outside, the night deepened, quiet but alive with potential. Elon remained at his desk, writing, reflecting, and planning, anchored by the lessons of the past, ready for the inevitable storms ahead. Each decision, each person, each detail mattered, and for the first time in years, he felt fully aligned with that truth, ready to lead not just with ambition, but with clarity, empathy, and purpose. True strength is revealed when the future refuses to wait for preparation. Elon arrived at the SpaceX launch control early. Before sunrise, the horizon a muted gradient of dark blue and gold. The starship for the upcoming interplanetary mission was prepped and ready, yet the screens flickered with unusual telemetry, a subtle anomaly in the propulsion sequence, something the simulations hadn't predicted. His chest tightened not with panic, but with the acute awareness that comes when responsibility outweighs comfort. This wasn't just a technical issue. It was a test of all the lessons he had cultivated over months and years. Trust, observation, decisive reflection, and leadership under pressure. Pressure differential in stage 3 is off nominal, a senior engineer reported, voice calm but tight. Elon walked closer, tracing the numbers with his eyes. Duration, rate of change, cross-check with thermal logs from last 3 tests. His questions were precise, deliberate, designed to extract information without creating fear, to guide action without imposing panic. Minutes became an orchestration of minds and machines. Junior engineers hesitated with small suggestions. Mid-level engineers debated corrections. And Elon moved among them, observing micro-reactions, the slightest furrowed brow, a subtle hesitation, the tone of voice under stress. He offered a nod here, a quiet word there, an acknowledgement that quietly reinforced confidence. Trust yourself. I see you. Your judgment matters. The anomaly intensified unexpectedly. Screens blinked red. Elon's pulse quickened, but he remained outwardly composed. This is the measure of leadership, he thought. So when then we have a 2-3, we have a B, we have one, not in calm, but in the eye of uncertainty. He directed a layered response, simulate every failure mode in real time, implement minor manual adjustments, and prepare a contingency protocol for the launch sequence. The team responded, coordinating seamlessly, yet the tension was palpable. Each decision now carried potential repercussions far beyond the pad reputation, mission success, and human safety, all balanced in a delicate equation. Hours passed. Sweat collected on foreheads, fingers trembled, voices oscillated between controlled dialogue and tense mutters. Elon observed quietly, stepping in only to clarify, to confirm, to nudge. Every action, every micro-interaction, was a test of culture. Could attention, reflection, and trust survive under pressure? Finally, a breakthrough. An adjustment to the cooling valves in stage 3 stabilized the pressure. Telemetry normalized. Elon allowed himself a moment to exhale, quietly, without fanfare. Relief coursed subtly through the room. But the deeper satisfaction was in observing the team's resilience, their ability to act decisively, collaboratively, and attentively under extreme uncertainty. Later, Elon stepped onto the balcony, looking at the launch pad glistening under early sunlight. Rain had left small puddles that mirrored the sky, a reminder that clarity often follows turbulence. He reflected on everything: the past failures, the lessons, the growth, the teams who had trusted him, and whom he had learned to trust. Each element, small or large, had converged into this precise moment of awareness. A soft ping on his tablet drew his attention. A message from James, almost prophetic in tone. Leadership is measured not by smooth launches, but by how you guide through turbulence. Elon smiled faintly, understanding the depth of the statement now more profoundly than ever. He turned back inside, gathering his notes. He documented every observation, every decision point, every human response. These weren't just technical records, they were the blueprint of sustained leadership, integrating foresight, human awareness, and procedural rigor into a coherent, actionable framework. By midday, Starship systems were verified, anomaly fully resolved, and launch readiness confirmed. Elon addressed the team. Today we faced something none of us expected, yet through focus, trust, and diligence, we navigated uncertainty together. Remember this: our culture, our attention, and our respect for one another define our success as much as technology does. When fragile the lifers, the team dispersed, some exhausted, others energized, but all carrying the subtle lesson. Resilience wasn't born from perfection, but from preparation, reflection, and collaborative awareness. Elon lingered, watching the starship under the sun's growing warmth, its metallic frame shimmering like liquid silver. He thought of his personal life, of relationships, and the ongoing necessity to balance human connection with relentless ambition. Lessons from the past, moments of reflection, and now lived experience under extreme pressure had converged. Growth was holistic, integrating technical mastery, human awareness, and deliberate reflection into each decision. As he finally stepped away from the pad, Elon whispered under his breath, a mantra forged from years of experience: every choice matters, every person matters, every detail matters. Leadership is the sum of attention, awareness, and trust. The starship stood ready for launch, a testament not only to technology, but to human vigilance, foresight, and deliberate action. Elon walked toward the city below, each step measured, confident, and grounded, aware that the greatest journeys, both personal and professional, were navigated through reflection applied in real time, under pressure, with people whose trust and attention had become as essential as any system he had ever built. Every moment of success carries the weight of lessons learned, silently guiding the future. The launch pad gleamed under the morning sun, metallic silver reflecting across puddles left from the previous night's rain. Elon stood at a distance, observing the starship poised for interplanetary flight. It was more than a vessel, It was the culmination of months of preparation, countless decisions, and human collaboration under pressure. Every component, every valve, every sensor bore the imprint of vigilance and reflection. The final countdown began. Elon's gaze shifted between the screens and the rocket itself. Telemetry confirmed stability. The previous anomalies were resolved. He felt a strange combination of tension and serenity, a recognition that while success seemed imminent, the true measure of this moment lay in human and systemic coordination, not just the rocket itself. "Engage final sequence," he instructed calmly. His voice carried authority without dominance, a signal of trust to the team who had labored tirelessly. Engineers moved in synchronized precision, executing protocols rehearsed countless times. Elon noticed subtle microsignals, an engineer's hesitation, a junior technician's nervous glance. He nodded almost imperceptibly, acknowledgement and reassurance distilled in a single gesture. "We've prepared. Trust yourself." As the countdown reached 0, the engines ignited, flames erupting beneath the starship, pushing it upward with a controlled, almost graceful ferocity. The ground trembled, vibrations coursing through the launch pad and into the people surrounding it. Elon's mind was alert, noting each telemetry spike, each environmental variable, yet also allowing space for the awe of the moment. The starship rose steadily, slicing through clouds, leaving a trail of fire and smoke. Elon felt a quiet, profound satisfaction, not pride in technology alone, but in the culmination of human focus, trust, and attention under pressure. The team had performed flawlessly, not because of fear, but because leadership had fostered clarity, accountability, and deliberate care. As the starship disappeared into the upper atmosphere, Elon exhaled, letting tension release in a subtle, controlled motion. The hum of the city below mixed with the distant echoes of engines fading. He reflected on the long months, the Roadster prototype, the Starship anomaly, the intense nights of problem-solving, the mentorship moments with engineers, and the personal growth that had emerged from facing the unforeseen. He walked among the team, quietly offering nods and subtle gestures of acknowledgement. No speeches, no dramatic pronouncements, just recognition that their collective effort, attentiveness, and courage had made this possible. Micro-expressions of relief and satisfaction rippled through the engineers, and Elon absorbed it, internalizing the connection between human awareness and achievement. Later, alone in his office, Elon opened his notebook. He began documenting reflections for future missions, not just technical protocols but insights into leadership and team dynamics. How trust and deliberate observation could prevent failures, how micro-acknowledgements cultivated resilience, how reflection applied in real time became the anchor for decisive action. He paused, thinking of personal life, family, relationships, moments of neglect in the past. He understood now that leadership and growth were inseparable from attentiveness to people, not only machines. True legacy, he realized, was not the rocket alone, but the culture, care, and vision that enabled its launch. A message from James appeared. "The future isn't built on perfection. It's built on awareness, courage, and the people who stand with you." Elon smiled, understanding how deeply this applied to both professional and personal spheres. Stepping onto the balcony, Elon looked at the horizon. The sun was high now, light scattering across clouds, painting the city with warmth. He allowed himself a moment of stillness, letting the quiet affirm the lessons learned. Growth, leadership, and success weren't measured in dramatic gestures or public acclaim, but in the subtle, continuous application of reflection, trust, and care. Elon whispered to himself, a mantra now familiar but resonant. Every choice matters. Every person matters. Every moment is an opportunity to act with awareness. The starship's path faded into the sky, but its imprint lingered in his mind, not just as a technical achievement, but as a symbol of holistic progress. Human insight, harmonized with ambition, vigilance aligned with trust, and reflection embedded in action. As the day unfolded, Elon turned back to his desk, ready to continue planning, observing, and guiding. He knew the future would bring unforeseen challenges, but now he had the tools, experience, reflection, attentiveness, and trust to navigate them. The launch was complete, but the journey of growth, both for him and those around him, continued. Steady and deliberate, like the starship's trajectory into the unknown. Vision is only as enduring as the lessons embedded in every decision. Elon returned to his office the morning after the launch, the city below bathed in pale sunlight. The starship had successfully breached orbit, its trajectory stable, yet his mind remained anchored to deeper reflections. The accomplishment was immense, but the real measure of progress wasn't in a single success, it was in sustainability, human engagement, and the decisions that would ripple forward into the years ahead. Reports and analytics filled his desk, each line of data a potential insight or warning. Elon read meticulously, noting anomalies already emerging in distant sensors, patterns in human operations, and potential improvements for upcoming missions. Technical mastery alone wasn't enough. The ability to anticipate future challenges and embed resilience into systems and into people was what separated a fleeting triumph from enduring achievement. James entered quietly, holding a tablet with projections for Mars colonization and Neuralink trials. "You've stabilized Starship, but the real challenge starts now," he said. "Long-term sustainability, scaling operations, and maintaining culture under expansion. It's a different kind of test. Long-term sustainability was long-term sustainability, was long-term sustainability, was long-term sustainability, long-term sustainability, long-term sustainability, long-term sustainability, wantomation, wantomation sustainability, wantomation sustainability, wantomation sus. Elon nodded. "It's easier to react to immediate crises than to plan for subtle, systemic pressures," he admitted. "But if the past has taught me anything, it's that reflection applied consistently is more powerful than brute force action." He scrolled through projections, noting bottlenecks in human coordination, supply logistics, and technical redundancies. Each observation reinforced a principle he had internalized over the past months: anticipation, attentiveness, and deliberate culture building mattered as much as propulsion, physics, or code efficiency. The human system behind the machine was just as critical. Later, he walked along the launch pad with a small team of engineers, the metallic structure glinting in the morning sun. "We're entering a new phase," he said, voice calm but determined. "The lessons from this launch aren't just about systems, they're about us. How we work, communicate, and trust each other under pressure defines every mission, every milestone." A junior engineer hesitated before speaking. "How do we ensure everyone stays aligned when projects expand so quickly?" Elon paused, considering. "By embedding reflection into every layer of the operation. Every decision must carry awareness not just of outcomes, but of people, processes, and potential ripple effects. That's how we scale safely and sustainably." As they walked, Elon observed subtle gestures, confidence in the team, micro cues of attention and trust, minor hesitations that could signal future friction. He knew that leadership wasn't only about giving orders, it was about reading these cues, understanding them, and nurturing collaboration even in unseen moments. Back in his office, Elon opened his private journal. He wrote long-term reflections, balancing ambition with human awareness, integrating cross-disciplinary collaboration, and preparing for unforeseen anomalies in both technology and human behavior. Each entry was both a blueprint and a meditation, a way to anchor lessons into practice. Hours passed. Elon considered his personal life, the family moments deferred, the relationships strained, the necessity of attention in spaces beyond work. Vision, he realized, required not only technical foresight but relational mindfulness. The ability to reflect, anticipate, and engage with care wasn't confined to engineering, it extended to every human connection he held. A soft chime on his tablet drew his attention. A message from an international partner discussing Mars supply chain logistics. Elon studied it carefully, noting potential bottlenecks, human variables, and technological limitations. Each decision now was compounded by consequence. Each action, however minor, carried weight. He leaned back, eyes on the city horizon. The weight of responsibility was immense, yet tempered by clarity. Reflection had become both shield and compass, allowing him to act decisively while remaining attuned to subtle cues, both human and mechanical. Evening arrived, and Elon stepped onto the balcony, the city lights shimmering like a constellation of effort, ambition, and human diligence. He whispered to himself, mantra-like, sustain vision with reflection, sustain action with trust, sustain ambition with awareness. When is about it far? When is about afar? When is about afar? When is about afar? When is about afar? The starship orbited silently above, a testament to collaboration, vigilance, and deliberate decision-making. Elon understood that the mission's success was only the beginning. Real achievement lay in embedding the lessons, nurturing the culture, and anticipating challenges yet unseen. He turned back inside, opening a fresh notebook. Plans, contingencies, reflections, and new visionary goals flowed across the pages. Each word was deliberate, each thought anchored in experience. Elon was no longer reacting to crises. He was constructing a framework for enduring progress, one where human insight, reflection, and awareness were as vital as engines, code, or fuel. As night settled over the city, Elon remained at his desk, focused and grounded. The launch was complete, the mission on course, yet the journey of leadership, reflection, and growth stretched endlessly forward. Every decision mattered. Every person mattered. Every future challenge demanded the integration of all lessons learned into action and awareness. The future wasn't waiting, and Elon was ready not only to meet it, but to shape it with deliberate, reflective precision. Every horizon hides new challenges. True leadership meets them with clarity and care. Elon arrived at SpaceX early, the sky a muted gray streaked with the first rays of dawn. Today wasn't about a single launch. It was about integrating multiple operations: Mars supply chain logistics, Neuralink trials, and Starship maintenance into a coherent system. The complexity was staggering. One overlooked variable, one misread signal, and the cascading consequences could be severe. He stepped into the control hub, where engineers, logistic coordinators, and neuroscientists huddled around screens and schematics. Each team brought specialized expertise, yet integration had been slow. Communication gaps threatened efficiency, and subtle tensions had begun to surface. Elon's task wasn't just technical coordination, it was harmonizing people, systems, and vision under the weight of simultaneous, unprecedented challenges. A junior engineer approached nervously. "Sir, there's a potential conflict between the Mars trajectory recalibration and Neuralink data integration schedules. Adjusting one could delay the other." Elon considered the information carefully. "Show me the dependencies, the timelines, and the critical nodes," he instructed. His voice was calm but deliberate. He needed clarity, not reaction. He studied the schematics, tracing lines of consequence across multiple disciplines. Subtle cues in the engineer's expressions revealed uncertainty, but Elon nodded slightly, signaling both acknowledgement and trust. "I see you. I trust your judgment." For hours, Elon orchestrated the teams like a conductor navigating a symphony of disparate instruments. He asked targeted questions, encouraged cross-team dialogue, and guided decisions without dictating every move. Subtle micro-adjustments, a nod here, a clarifying question there, transformed hesitation into confidence. He observed breathing patterns, postural shifts, micro-expressions, and tone changes, aware that human awareness was as critical as algorithmic precision. Suddenly, telemetry flagged an anomaly in Starship's propulsion calibration, minor, but potentially disruptive if uncorrected. The room tensed. Elon leaned in, examining the data, then calmly instructed parallel teams. One to stabilize propulsion, another to adjust logistics schedules, and a third to monitor Neuralink data pipelines. Every action was interdependent, every decision a ripple across multiple systems. Hours stretched into a tense rhythm of micro-decisions and continuous reflection. Elon's mantra guided him: observe, anticipate, integrate. Every hesitation, every uncertainty, was an opportunity to reinforce trust, encourage observation, and align human effort with systemic precision. By late afternoon, the integrated system stabilized. Mars supply chain schedules were synchronized. Neuralink trials could proceed without delay, and Starship propulsion parameters were within optimal tolerance. The room exhaled, collectively, subtle relief, recognition, and pride evident in faces illuminated by screens. Elon allowed himself a brief smile, not of self-congratulation, but acknowledgement. Growth was proven when complexity was navigated without chaos, and human collaboration endured under pressure. Later, Elon stepped onto the balcony, overlooking the launch pads, the city, and the horizon beyond. He reflected on the subtle interplay of trust, foresight, and leadership. Vision alone was insufficient. Integration of human and technical systems required attentiveness, reflection, and deliberate care. Leadership wasn't simply giving instructions, it was embedding resilience into every decision, every connection, every process. A notification from James appeared. The greatest challenge is not complexity itself, but how well we harmonize human insight with systemic precision. Elon smiled faintly. The words resonated deeply, he had lived them today. Back inside, he opened his notebook, recording observations, interdependencies, communication gaps, microbehavioral patterns, and protocols for future integration. These weren't just technical notes, they were lessons in human system harmony, awareness embedded into actionable plans. Evening fell. Elon remained at his desk, reviewing the day, thinking of future missions, and considering personal reflection alongside professional vision. He knew that growth wasn't linear. It emerged from constant calibration, attention to both human and technical variables, and deliberate application of past lessons. He whispered under his breath, "Every system, every person, every choice is an opportunity to build coherence, trust, and enduring progress." Outside, the starship stood ready, Mars still distant but reachable, and Neuralink pipelines poised for next phase trials. Elon felt a calm certainty the integration of lessons, attentiveness, and reflection had produced not only stability but insight. The future was vast, complex, and unpredictable. Yet now, he was equipped to meet it with vision, awareness, and deliberate care. The greatest tests are never only about technology, they are about choices and conscience. Elon arrived at the office earlier than usual, the city still shrouded in dawn mist. Today's challenge wasn't a technical anomaly or a logistical puzzle, it was a human one. Reports had arrived of internal friction between the Neuralink research team and the Mars logistics engineers. The disagreement wasn't about data or deadlines, it was about ethics, priorities, and long-term implications. He leaned against the desk, reading the messages. One side emphasized the urgency of pushing Neuralink trials. The other stressed that supply chain recalibrations for Mars must remain unimpeded. Both were correct, both were essential, yet neither could fully proceed without some compromise. Elon exhaled, aware that this was a crucible for his leadership. Technical skill alone would not suffice, empathy, ethical clarity, and strategic foresight were required. He understood that how he handled this would ripple far beyond schedules, it would define the culture, trust, and sustainability of his organizations. He convened the team, listening first, allowing each side to speak without interruption. He observed micro-reactions, hesitation, tension in shoulders, subtle eye shifts. This wasn't just data, this was human decision-making under moral and operational pressure. Elon waited, silent, letting reflection guide both him and the room. Finally, he spoke. "I understand both perspectives. The tension here isn't a flaw, it's the presence of responsibility. We are making choices that will affect people, technology, and the future. We must act deliberately." His voice was calm, grounded, and authoritative without domineering. He proposed a phased solution. Neuralink trials would proceed in controlled, small-scale environments to ensure ethical compliance, while Mars logistics recalibrations would continue with adaptive oversight, allowing flexibility to incorporate data from trials. Each team retained agency, yet accountability and alignment were embedded across the operation. The room reacted subtly, nervous relief, nods, murmurs of acknowledgement. Elon observed quietly, noting not only technical feasibility, but human morale, trust, and collaborative potential. Reflection had become as essential as engineering precision. Awareness of human nuance was now the guiding variable. Later, alone in his office, Elon reflected on personal stakes. Decisions like this carried professional weight, but also moral consequence. He thought of his own history, choices deferred, relationships neglected, ambition pursued sometimes without full ethical consideration. Leadership demanded not only vision, but constant reflection, vigilance, and empathy. He opened his private journal, documenting not only technical contingencies, but ethical reasoning, human dynamics, and lessons for future leadership. Each note was deliberate, a blueprint for integrating conscience into action without compromising operational excellence. Hours later, Elon stepped onto the balcony, observing the city waking beneath a clear sky. The subtle hum of activity mirrored the human systems he guided, complex, interdependent, and requiring constant attention. He whispered to himself, "Decisions are not victories until they honor both people and purpose." A message arrived from James. "You cannot control every outcome, but you can guide intention and reflection. That is leadership." Elon smiled faintly, recognizing the truth in those words. The day had demanded synthesis of technical skill, human awareness, and ethical clarity. And the outcome was not perfection but alignment, trust, and integrity. As night fell, Elon returned to his desk, planning next steps for Neuralink and Mars integration. Each decision now carried dual weight, operational and moral. Every interaction, every instruction, every observation was a small piece of sustaining trust and human-centered progress. The Starship and Neuralink systems hummed quietly in the distance, symbols of ambition realized but also of responsibility embraced. Elon understood that the greatest challenge was not the machinery or data, but the conscious integration of human and technical foresight. He leaned back, exhaling, and whispered one final reflection. Sustainable progress is built not only on vision and technology, but on conscience, awareness, and deliberate care for every choice we make. Control is an illusion. Resilience is measured by response, not prediction. Elon was reviewing mission projections when an urgent alert arrived. A solar storm, stronger than any previously recorded, was heading directly toward Earth. Satellite arrays, communication networks, and Mars-bound operations faced potential disruption. The data was immediate, precise, and alarming but incomplete. He stood silently for a moment, absorbing the implications. This wasn't a problem solvable by engineering alone. It demanded coordination, foresight, and human composure under stress. His mind raced, not with panic, but with structured urgency. Prepare, anticipate, communicate, yet maintain clarity. Elon convened the SpaceX and Neuralink teams simultaneously, integrating meteorologists, engineers, and operations managers into a high-priority response network. The hub hummed with activity, telemetry updates, predictive modeling, system diagnostics, but the human element was equally vital. Micro-reactions, hesitations, and subtle communication gaps could determine whether the crisis escalated or stabilized. Immediate priorities: protect orbital assets, secure Mars-bound supplies, maintain Neuralink integrity, Elon instructed calmly. Each subsystem is connected. A failure in one could cascade through all. Track dependencies, communicate every deviation, and act only with confirmed data. Minutes stretched like hours. Elon rotated between teams, observing breathing patterns, tension in shoulders, quickened eye movements. He intervened only when clarification or alignment was needed, letting trust and preparation guide decisions. Every micro-action, every micro-expression mattered. Reflection was no longer just a tool, it was a lifeline. Suddenly, telemetry indicated a minor disruption in the Starship's trajectory correction system. Elon's pulse quickened slightly, yet he remained composed outwardly. "We planned for this. Unit 1. Unit Ventures. Trust the protocols and the people executing them." He directed a parallel response. Engineers stabilized the system while communication relayed to Mars logistics teams, ensuring no chain reaction occurred. Hours passed in intense rhythm. The solar storm grew closer, yet each subsystem responded as designed. Neuralink operations were temporarily isolated to protect integrity. Mars supplies rerouted in real time, and satellites adjusted orientation to minimize exposure. Elon moved continuously among his teams, offering concise guidance, observation, and reassurance, an anchor in the storm of uncertainty. By late evening, the storm reached peak intensity. Outside, the sky shimmered with auroras visible far beyond usual latitudes. Inside, the hum of machinery and human concentration created a tense symphony. Elon allowed himself a brief, internal acknowledgement. Every plan, every lesson from past crises, every human insight had converged into this exact moment. The storm subsided gradually. Systems were intact, operations stabilized, and both orbital and Mars-bound assets were secure. Elon exhaled deeply, not in triumph, but in measured relief. He observed his teams tired, alert, yet resilient. Reflection, preparation, and trust had carried them through a force entirely beyond their control. Later, in solitude, Elon reviewed every decision made during the crisis. He documented insights for future mitigation, redundancy protocols, human composure strategies, cross-disciplinary coordination frameworks. Each note reinforced a singular truth. Leadership under unforeseen force was as much about human awareness and deliberate observation as it was about technical excellence. He stepped onto the balcony, the night sky rippling with residual auroral light. "No plan is perfect," he whispered. "But reflection, preparation, and trust sustain us when the unpredictable arrives." A soft ping from James appeared. Crisis reveals not weakness, but where attention, care, and awareness truly matter. Elon smiled faintly, internalizing the insight. The storm was over, yet the lesson was eternal. The future was unpredictable, and resilience depended on integration of systems, people, and reflective leadership. As he returned to his office, Elon opened his notebook. The pages filled with strategic foresight, moral reflection, and operational insight. He knew the coming months would bring new challenges, technical, human, and environmental, but today had proven the core principle. Deliberate awareness and trust, applied consistently, could navigate even the most unforeseen forces. The starship orbited silently above. Neuralink systems remained stable, and Mars logistics adapted seamlessly. Elon's gaze lingered on the horizon, understanding that true leadership was not about controlling every variable, but about embedding resilience into every decision, every person, and every system. He whispered once more, "We cannot command the storm, but we can guide our response with clarity, trust, and reflection." Thank you, Zora. After every storm, clarity emerges, not from control, but from reflection. The day after the solar storm, Elon arrived at SpaceX early, the horizon still painted with streaks of residual auroral light from the night before. The city hummed softly below, unaware of the global threat that had passed and the delicate orchestration that had kept interplanetary operations intact. Elon, however, felt the weight of both relief and responsibility. He walked along the launch pads, observing the starship. Minor recalibrations were underway, yet the systems remained stable. He noted the subtle shifts in equipment alignment, the team's precision, and the quiet discipline that had carried them through the crisis. Success isn't the absence of danger, it's the presence of preparedness and awareness. In the operations hub, Elon gathered his leadership teams. "The storm revealed strengths, but also gaps," he said quietly. "We need to adapt not just our systems, but our mindset. How we respond under pressure defines the future more than the threat itself." A systems engineer spoke up. "Some redundancies we thought were sufficient were stressed more than anticipated. Should we implement additional safeguards?" Elon considered the question carefully. "Yes, but selectively. Overcomplication can introduce new risks. The goal is not perfect protection, it's resilient adaptation." His gaze swept across the team, noting micro-expressions of focus and concern. He allowed space for reflection, trusting them to process and contribute thoughtfully. Later, alone in his office, Elon reviewed long-term plans for Mars colonization, Neuralink integration, and satellite infrastructure. The storm had revealed interdependencies he had underestimated. Each line of data prompted reflection. How could operations be made more adaptable? How could human insight be leveraged to anticipate systemic vulnerabilities? How could personal and organizational awareness be strengthened simultaneously? He paused, thinking of the human cost, the stress on his teams, the ethical considerations, and the personal sacrifices required to maintain progress. Leadership, he realized, was inseparable from empathy. Achievements mattered only insofar as they respected both the human and technical systems that enabled them. A message from James appeared. "Resilience is built in the calm after the storm. Reflection now seeds the next breakthroughs." Elon nodded. The words resonated. He understood that visionary decisions required integration of experience, foresight, and moral clarity. He walked to the balcony, city lights shimmering below, reflecting in his eyes. He allowed a moment of quiet introspection. The storm had tested not just systems, but character. Vision without reflection is blind. Ambition without care is brittle. He whispered the thought aloud, letting it anchor him. Returning inside, he began drafting new protocols, not merely for technical safeguards, but for cultivating human awareness and ethical mindfulness across teams. Each note combined data, observation, and philosophical insight. Elon recognized that these frameworks would guide future crises, ensure collaboration, and embed reflective leadership into the culture of his enterprises. Hours later, he reviewed the Starship trajectory logs, Mars supply chain adjustments, and Neuralink integration updates. Systems were stable, but the human dimension was equally critical. He reflected on his own growth, the subtle calibration of decisiveness and empathy, technical mastery and moral clarity, vision and reflection. Evening arrived, and Elon stepped onto the balcony again, the sky fading to deep indigo. He whispered a final reflection for the day. Every storm, every challenge, every unexpected force is a teacher. Our role is to learn, adapt, and guide with both clarity and care. Act is. The starship glimmered in orbit above. A symbol, not only of ambition realized, but of lessons internalized. Neuralink trials were secure, Mars logistics were resilient, and the teams had emerged stronger, aware, and aligned. Elon's gaze lingered on the horizon, understanding that every decision, every reflection, and every small act of awareness built the foundation for enduring progress. He returned to his desk, journal in hand, documenting insights for future leadership, systemic resilience, and personal growth. The storm had passed, but its lessons would echo indefinitely, shaping decisions, guiding vision, and reinforcing the central truth of his work. Sustainable achievement is rooted in reflection, awareness, and deliberate care for both human and technical systems. Innovation is meaningless without a framework that sustains both people and purpose. Elon arrived at the SpaceX headquarters with a sense of quiet determination. The storm had passed, systems were secure, and the lessons of reflection, resilience, and human awareness had crystallized into actionable insights. Today, the focus was transformation, not reaction, but proactive evolution. He entered the operations hub, observing the teams already engaged in cross-disciplinary discussions. Engineers, neuroscientists, logistics coordinators, and programmers were converging on solutions for simultaneous challenges, optimizing Mars supply chains, enhancing Neuralink trials, and preparing Starship upgrades. The potential for innovation was vast, but without careful integration, progress could fracture. Elon gathered the leadership group. We're entering a phase where small improvements aren't enough. We need systemic transformation. Every subsystem, human or technical, must operate in alignment, with adaptability built into its core. His gaze swept across the room, catching subtle nods, hesitant smiles, and flickers of excitement. Reflection had prepared them for this moment. Now, action would define the next era. A senior engineer spoke cautiously. Scaling Mars operations while accelerating Neuralink research could introduce friction. How do we balance innovation with operational stability? Elon leaned forward, voice steady and precise. By embedding foresight and human-centered design into every decision. Anticipate interactions before they occur. Build trust into the workflow. By foresight you foresight. By foresight combining Satan. Makes with a make oxazone. You foresight every protocol, every process, every instruction should respect both the human and technical systems. End. Over the next hours, Elon guided discussions that blended technical breakthroughs with human-centric thinking. Neuralink interface improvements were designed not only for efficiency, but for ethical clarity and user safety. Mars logistics algorithms incorporated real-time feedback loops to account for unforeseen events, while Starship maintenance protocols were redesigned to reduce human error and enhance predictive reliability. Throughout the day, Elon moved seamlessly between teams, observing micro-behaviors, hesitation, confidence, subtle cues of collaboration, and adjusting leadership input accordingly. Reflection remained a constant undercurrent, shaping every decision and ensuring that innovation did not outpace ethical and operational awareness. Later, Alone in his office, Elon reviewed long-term strategy documents. He visualized interconnections between Mars colonization, Neuralink integration, and orbital infrastructure. Every variable: human skill, technological resilience, environmental unpredictability was considered, mapped, and weighed. Transformation, he realized, required not just innovation, but a comprehensive, anticipatory framework. He opened his journal, documenting insights for the next phase. Protocols that integrated human awareness, technical agility, and ethical foresight. Feedback mechanisms to continuously learn from operations. Strategies for sustaining culture and trust amid exponential growth. Each note reinforced the principle that leadership must harmonize vision with reflection, ambition with responsibility. As evening approached, Elon stepped onto the balcony overlooking the launch pads and the city beyond. The soft hum of activity mirrored the orchestration of human and technical systems he had cultivated. He allowed himself a rare moment of pause, reflecting on how far progress had come and how far it could still go. Vision without integration is fragile. Ambition without reflection is dangerous. A message from James appeared. You're not just building systems, you're cultivating a legacy of alignment, awareness, and adaptability. Elon smiled faintly. The words resonated deeply, encapsulating the essence of the transformative strategies he had implemented today. He returned to his desk, reviewing proposals for the next phase. Advanced Starship upgrades, expanded Neuralink research, and the first steps towards self-sustaining Mars habitats. Each initiative was informed by the lessons of reflection, ethical foresight, and human-centered integration. Elon understood that success would not be measured by speed alone, but by the enduring alignment of systems, people, and purpose. As night settled, Elon whispered a quiet reflection. Transformation is not only about what we create, but how we integrate, sustain, and honor every connection along the way. The Starship glimmered in orbit above, Neuralink systems hummed steadily, and Mars logistics pipelines remained adaptive. Elon's gaze lingered on the horizon, knowing that the future was not simply a destination, but a continuous process of reflection, integration, and deliberate action. Even the best-laid plans meet their truest test in the unexpected. Elon stepped onto the SpaceX balcony early, the first rays of sun glinting off the Starship's metallic surface. Today, the challenge wasn't a storm or a technical anomaly, it was political pressure from international regulators and a sudden cybersecurity breach in Neuralink's experimental networks. Both threats were external, unpredictable, and potentially disruptive. He entered the operations hub, where the hum of activity had a tense undertone. Engineers monitored system integrity, legal teams coordinated with international agencies, and cybersecurity specialists traced suspicious activity in real time. The room was a microcosm of interdependent systems, technical, human, and geopolitical, each sensitive to the slightest misstep. A cybersecurity analyst spoke quickly. "Sir, the breach seems isolated, but attempts are coming from multiple vectors simultaneously. If we act hastily, it could cascade across both Neuralink and Mars logistics systems." Elon absorbed the information, nodding slowly. Contain, monitor, and trace. No overreaction. Human oversight must guide technical responses. Every action we take must preserve integrity without introducing instability. Simultaneously, his legal liaison projected updates from international regulators. Policies were shifting rapidly, deadlines were accelerating, and compliance requirements threatened to delay Mars supply chains. Elon considered both challenges together. The breach and the regulatory pressure weren't connected directly, yet their intersection could destabilize operations if mishandled. He gathered the team for a rapid coordination session. We cannot control the external forces, but we can control how we respond. Prioritize containment, clarity, and transparency. Decisions must respect operational stability, human oversight, and long-term alignment. Ethical clarity is not optional, it is our foundation. Hours passed in a tense rhythm of micro-decisions. Elon rotated among teams, observing subtle signs of stress and uncertainty. He intervened only when necessary, providing targeted guidance and moral reassurance. Reflection under pressure became a tool as essential as any algorithm or protocol. By mid-afternoon, the cybersecurity breach had been contained without triggering system-wide consequences. Neuralink systems were secure, and protocols were updated to anticipate future attacks. Meanwhile, Mars' supply chains had been recalibrated to comply with new regulatory demands while maintaining operational efficiency. Elon noted the subtle interplay of human coordination, ethical decision-making, and technical precision that had made this possible. Later, alone in his office, Elon reflected on the events. External forces, political, technological, environmental, could never be fully predicted or controlled. True resilience, he realized, required integrated foresight, ethical grounding, and the ability to maintain calm decisiveness under pressure. Leadership was not about domination over circumstances, but alignment of human, technical, and moral systems in the face of unpredictability. He opened his journal, documenting lessons learned, systems for anticipatory governance, protocols for integrated risk management, and strategies for cultivating trust and awareness across teams. Each note reinforced a singular principle: sustainable progress emerges from the synergy of vision, reflection, and disciplined responsiveness. Stepping onto the balcony again, as dusk fell, Elon surveyed the horizon. The starship shimmered faintly in the evening light, Neuralink systems hummed steadily, and Mars logistics pipelines remained adaptive. He whispered quietly, "External forces will always test us. Our strength lies in clarity, reflection, and the deliberate integration of every system, human and technical alike." A soft ping from James appeared. "The unexpected is the crucible that refines true leadership. You've guided both people and systems through it." Elon smiled faintly, internalizing the affirmation. The challenges had been external, uncontrollable, and unpredictable. But the integrated framework he had built, informed by reflection and ethical foresight, had ensured resilience. He returned to his desk, opening long-term plans for Starship, Neuralink, and Mars operations. Each initiative now incorporated learnings from the crisis, enhanced cybersecurity, proactive regulatory engagement, and protocols emphasizing human judgment alongside technical precision. He understood that sustainable achievement was not just a product of innovation, but of continuous alignment, deliberate care, and ethical awareness in the face of external pressures. Night fell over the city. Elon lingered at the balcony one final time, observing the faint glow of activity below. He whispered, "Plans are fragile. Resilience is cultivated. Our mission endures because awareness, reflection, and care are inseparable from progress." Ikansu. The starship orbited silently above. Neuralink networks operated securely, and Mars logistics pipelines were prepared for next phase operations. Elon's gaze held the horizon, knowing that the future would test him again, but that integrated systems, reflective leadership, and ethical foresight would continue to guide both vision and action. True progress demands collaboration, vision, and the courage to navigate uncharted territory together. Elon arrived at the conference hall early, the city below cloaked in the soft glow of morning. Today was not a solo mission, this was a global endeavor. Representatives from international space agencies, private aerospace firms, and research institutions had convened to discuss a collaborative mission to establish the first sustainable outpost on Mars. The stakes were unprecedented, the potential for innovation immense, and the margin for error non-existent. He moved through the hall, observing micro-reactions in delegates, subtle hesitation, cautious optimism, and the weight of responsibility in every gesture. Leadership here required more than technical expertise. It demanded negotiation, empathy, and an unwavering focus on long-term vision. Every decision would resonate across national boundaries, technical systems, and human collaboration networks. The meeting began. Elon spoke first, projecting calm clarity. "Our goal is not merely to reach Mars, but to establish a framework where multiple organizations, systems, and cultures can operate in alignment. Success will require technical rigor, ethical clarity, and above all, trust." A delegate from the European Space Agency leaned forward. "Coordination on timelines and resource allocation will be challenging. Each nation has unique regulations, priorities, and risk tolerances." Elon nodded. "Exactly. We must design protocols that respect individual mandates while creating an integrated operational model. Every decision must account for technical feasibility, human behavior, and ethical responsibility simultaneously." Hours passed as discussions navigated complex logistics, orbital mechanics, supply chain integration, and research priorities. Elon guided conversations, asking incisive questions, highlighting dependencies, and synthesizing information across disciplines and cultures. He observed microbehaviors: hesitation, overconfidence, subtle disengagement, and intervened with empathy and precision, ensuring that dialogue remained productive and trust was maintained. At one point, a sudden debate erupted over resource prioritization. Tensions escalated, and the potential for conflict threatened progress. Elon leaned forward, voice calm but firm. Disagreement is not failure. It is an opportunity to integrate perspectives. Let's focus on shared objectives and systemic alignment rather than individual preferences. The room gradually shifted, moving from contention to collaborative problem solving. Systems models were recalibrated, supply chains synchronized, and research timelines harmonized. Elon's approach, combining technical insight, human observation, and strategic foresight, transformed potential stalemates into coordinated action. Later, alone in a quiet conference room, Elon reflected on the day. Collaboration at this scale was not only a technical or logistical challenge, it was a test of human awareness, ethical judgment, and cross-cultural understanding. Vision alone was insufficient. Successful global integration required a deep appreciation of human nuance, organizational culture, and systemic interdependence. He opened his journal, documenting insights, protocols for multi-organization coordination, ethical frameworks for shared decision-making, and strategies for maintaining operational and relational trust under pressure. Each note reinforced a principle he had long held. Leadership is most effective when it harmonizes human, technical, and moral dimensions. Stepping onto the balcony overlooking the city at dusk, Elon allowed himself a moment of reflection. The sun's rays shimmered against the skyline, mirroring the possibilities of human ingenuity and collaboration. Progress is not solitary. It is built through shared vision, rigorous alignment, and trust, cultivated across boundaries. A soft message from James appeared. You've navigated complexity not only through systems but through understanding people. That is the future of leadership in space. Elon smiled faintly, internalizing the affirmation. The day had demonstrated that human awareness, ethical clarity, and cross-disciplinary collaboration were as critical as propulsion systems, neural interfaces, or supply chains. He returned to his office, reviewing proposals for integrated Mars mission protocols, collaborative research initiatives, and communication networks designed for global operations. Each initiative reflected the lessons learned today: anticipation, reflection, ethical foresight, and deliberate alignment of human and technical systems. Night fell, and Elon gazed once more at the horizon. The starship glimmered faintly above, neural networks operated securely, and international collaborators were poised to advance collective human progress. He whispered quietly, humanity's future in space depends not only on technology, but on the awareness, trust, and alignment we cultivate together. The lesson was clear. Collaboration at a planetary scale demanded the same principles he had applied to every challenge: reflection, ethical foresight, human-centered systems, and unwavering dedication to alignment. Elon understood that the journey to Mars was not a solo endeavor, but a shared enterprise where the success of humanity depended on integrated vision, trust, and deliberate action. Every breakthrough carries a question: how far will we go, and at what cost? Elon arrived at the SpaceX lab before dawn. Neuralink had made a breakthrough overnight, a prototype interface capable of real-time cognitive mapping across multiple users simultaneously. The implications were staggering: accelerated learning, enhanced collaboration, and unprecedented human-computer integration. Yet the breakthrough also raised profound ethical questions about consent, privacy, and the limits of augmentation. He stood quietly, observing the prototype interface. Its soft hum filled the lab, an almost imperceptible vibration that resonated through the polished floors. He noted the engineer's excitement, tempered by the weight of responsibility. Innovation without foresight is dangerous. Foresight without courage is stagnation. Elon convened the core team. This prototype is extraordinary, he said, voice calm but intense. But our obligation extends beyond technical achievement. Every application must respect human dignity, autonomy, and ethical principles. How we integrate this technology will define not only progress, but our integrity. A neural engineer spoke hesitantly. The interface could accelerate research and collaborative problem solving, but some potential applications could bypass informed consent protocols if mismanaged. It's smackably say, end quote. Elon nodded thoughtfully. Exactly. Our first imperative is establishing ethical guardrails. Innovation alone is meaningless without ethical alignment. Every experiment, every trial, every implementation must be deliberate, transparent, and accountable. The team worked through the morning, balancing technical potential with ethical constraints. Elon rotated among them, observing micro-behaviors. The excitement in eyes, the subtle tension in shoulders, the hesitation in hands hovering over controls. Leadership required awareness at this level, attention to human reactions as much as machine outputs. By midday, Elon initiated simulations of the interface under controlled ethical frameworks. Neural activity was mapped, multi-user collaboration tested, and safeguards embedded. Each step was deliberate, each decision accounted for both opportunity and consequence. He recognized that technological breakthroughs, without integrated ethical oversight, could spiral into unintended harm. Later, alone in his office, Elon reflected on the day's developments. Every advancement in human-computer integration carried dual potential, empowerment or exploitation. Leadership, he realized, was not only about enabling innovation but embedding ethical reflection, human-centered design, and accountability at every level. He opened his journal, documenting insights, protocols for multi-user consent, adaptive ethical safeguards, continuous human oversight, and mechanisms to ensure transparency in neural augmentation applications. Each note reinforced a guiding principle. Progress is only meaningful when aligned with human values and moral responsibility. As evening fell, Elon stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city. The lights shimmered, echoing the possibilities of human innovation. He whispered quietly, "True advancement demands courage, vision, and the wisdom to recognize limits. Power without ethics is a threat to what we seek to achieve." End quote. You can find Festival was in the 1907. A message from James appeared. You are shaping not just technology, but the moral framework for its use. That is the responsibility of leadership. Elon absorbed the affirmation. The breakthrough was extraordinary, but the true test lay in disciplined foresight, human-centered application, and ethical stewardship. He returned to the lab, reviewing prototype data, ethical frameworks, and collaborative protocols. Every system, human interaction, and ethical safeguard was interlinked, a mesh of innovation, reflection, and responsibility. Elon understood that the next steps would define the legacy of this technology, not merely for SpaceX or Neuralink, but for humanity. Night settled over the city, and Elon lingered at the balcony one final time, watching the faint glow of activity below. He whispered, "Innovation without conscience is fragile. Progress endures only when guided by reflection, ethics, and care for every human connection." The starship shimmered above, Neuralink prototypes hummed steadily, and the first steps toward collaborative Mars missions remained aligned. Elon's gaze held the horizon, knowing that breakthroughs carried both opportunity and responsibility, and that leadership demanded vigilance, courage, and unwavering ethical clarity. The true test of vision is how we respond when every element conspires against us. Theirs was. Elon stepped onto the balcony at dawn, the air crisp with the first light of morning. Below, the city shimmered, but his attention was on the horizon. Satellite arrays glinting faintly, Mars-bound payloads humming quietly, and Neuralink labs preparing for the next phase of trials. Today, multiple systems were under pressure. A solar flare had disrupted low-orbit satellites, a prototype neural interface was showing unexpected feedback loops, and global supply chain delays threatened Mars operations. Every challenge demanded simultaneous attention. Inside the operations hub, alarms pulsed softly. Engineers and mission controllers moved with precise urgency, eyes tracking live data streams, hands adjusting controls. Elon observed carefully, noticing microsignals hesitation, subtle misalignments in attention, unspoken tension, and integrated them into his decisions. Leadership required awareness not only of systems but of the humans operating them. A senior engineer spoke urgently. The flare caused temporary degradation in satellite communications. Mars trajectory corrections may be delayed if we don't adjust immediately. We have a flare. We have a flare cause us. We have a flare. We have a flare cause us. Elon processed quickly, mapping dependencies in his mind. Prioritize stabilization of orbital assets first. Reassign resources to maintain Mars trajectory. Neuralink feedback loops must be isolated to prevent cascading errors. We act methodically, not hastily. Stability under pressure is our first goal. However, problem so. Problem so. Minutes stretched like hours. The lab hummed with activity, neural interface readings fluctuated, satellite diagnostics updated in real time, supply chain pipelines rerouted. Elon moved seamlessly between teams, offering guidance, observation, and moral reassurance. His presence was both anchor and catalyst, calm decisiveness coupled with ethical clarity. At one point, the neural interface began producing unexpected patterns. An engineer froze, uncertain how to proceed. Elon leaned in, voice steady, pause, observe, document. Decisions made under pressure must not override human oversight. Every anomaly is data, not panic. Not panic. Not panic. Not panic. By midday, the immediate threats were stabilized. Satellite arrays were realigned, Mars supply chains adjusted, and neural interfaces contained within controlled parameters. Elon allowed himself a brief, internal acknowledgement. Every system, every human, had responded with precision under extreme pressure. Reflection, preparation, and deliberate coordination had saved potential catastrophe. Later, alone in his office, Elon reviewed the cascade of decisions made throughout the day. Environmental unpredictability, technological complexity, and human behavior had intersected, creating a crucible for both leadership and foresight. He documented insights for future mitigation, improved real-time monitoring, protocols for multi-system emergencies, and strategies for reinforcing human awareness under stress. Stepping onto the balcony at dusk, Elon gazed at the city, the starship, and the faint glow of the aurora-like effects from residual solar activity. He whispered quietly, "Chaos is inevitable. Resilience is deliberate. Leadership is the art of maintaining clarity, trust, and foresight when every variable conspires against you." A ping from James appeared. "You've transformed crisis into structured insight." That is the hallmark of integrated leadership. Elon smiled faintly, absorbing the affirmation. The day had tested not just technology, but human coordination, ethical judgment, and strategic foresight. He returned to his desk, reviewing all systems: orbital satellites, Mars logistics, neural interface data, and human team feedback. Every decision, adjustment, and observation was integrated into a continuous feedback loop, reinforcing resilience, ethical alignment, and operational stability. Night fell completely, and Elon lingered one final time at the balcony. The city below sparkled, the starship shimmered above, and Neuralink systems rested securely. He whispered, "Every challenge, every disruption, every unforeseen force teaches the same lesson. Progress endures only when guided by reflection, care, and deliberate integration of people and systems." The convergence of environmental, technological, and human factors had tested him, but the framework he had built of ethical foresight, integrated systems, and reflective leadership had prevailed. Elon understood that the future would bring ever greater challenges, yet resilience, alignment, and human-centered vision would remain the foundation for every breakthrough. The future of humanity depends not only on discovery, but on how we manage what we find. Elon arrived at the Mars Operations Center before sunrise. The city below bathed in pale light, satellites above tracing faint trajectories across the sky. Today was about resources, not just for exploration, but for sustainability. Water extraction protocols, energy harvesting, and habitat materials had to be managed across planetary distances, balancing efficiency, ethics, and human oversight. He entered the command hub, where engineers, scientists, and logistics coordinators were already coordinating a network of interdependent systems. Data streams from Mars, prototypes, orbital sensors, and Earth-based research flowed continuously. Elon's mind mapped these complex interactions as though seeing a living organism, every node, every pipeline, every feedback loop intertwined. A planetary systems engineer spoke urgently. Elon, initial calculations indicate the current water extraction efficiency could strain energy reserves if we scale production for habitat needs. Elon paused, considering the implications. Then we don't just scale blindly. We optimize across energy, material, and human capacity. Every resource we extract is a responsibility. Waste or overuse is failure, not progress. Tech's very one. He walked the team through simulations, emphasizing integrated decision-making. Neural networks modeled planetary resource distribution, while human operators contributed oversight, intuition, and ethical judgment. Elon noted microbehaviors, hesitation, uncertainty, flashes of insight, and calibrated interventions with precision. Innovation, he reminded himself, was useless without alignment of human judgment and technical capability. By midday, prototype habitats had been recalibrated to minimize energy consumption while maximizing resource efficiency. Water extraction was synced with energy storage, solar arrays dynamically adjusted to planetary conditions, and supply lines integrated with predictive algorithms to anticipate delays or environmental disruptions. Every decision reflected a combination of human foresight, technical precision, and ethical consideration. Later, Elon convened a virtual meeting with global partners contributing to Mars operations. Representatives from Europe, Asia, and private enterprises joined remotely. Coordination at this scale was unprecedented. Political interests, technological capacities, and ethical standards varied widely. Elon guided the discussion with clarity, empathy, and insistence on alignment. We share a responsibility, not just to reach Mars, but to do so sustainably. Every decision impacts ecosystems, people, and the legacy we leave for future colonists. During the session, a debate arose over resource allocation priorities. Some proposed aggressive scaling of energy infrastructure to accelerate habitat expansion. Others warned of long-term environmental and human risks. Elon listened carefully, interweaving ethical reflection with technical analysis. Acceleration without foresight is risk, not progress. Sustainability is not a limitation, it is a principle. Let's find solutions that respect both growth and responsibility. By late afternoon, consensus emerged. Resource distribution protocols were formalized, combining predictive algorithms with human oversight, ethical constraints, and multinational transparency. Elon observed a quiet shift in the team: relief, confidence, and renewed motivation. Systems were not merely operational, they were resilient, adaptable, and ethically guided. Alone, later in his office, Elon reflected on the day. Planetary resource management was more than logistics. It was a test of human judgment, collaborative ethics, and systemic foresight. Every decision carried weight far beyond immediate outcomes, impacting lives, ecosystems, and the future of interplanetary civilization. He opened his journal, documenting insights for future missions. Resource allocation frameworks, ethical guidelines for planetary exploitation, cross-cultural collaboration protocols, and adaptive systems integration. Each note reinforced a guiding principle. Sustainable progress requires simultaneous attention to human, technical, and ethical dimensions. As night fell, Elon stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city and the starship above. He whispered quietly, "Discovery is only as meaningful as the wisdom we apply in its use. Every innovation must honor people, systems, and the fragile balance of the world we inhabit and the worlds we touch." Its Asians reprise. With the rounds, with haven that makes of. The starship glimmered faintly against the dark sky. Satellites traced precise orbits, and Mars prototypes operated with integrated efficiency. Elon's gaze held the horizon, understanding that interplanetary resource management demanded not just technical skill, but foresight, ethical clarity, and unwavering human awareness. Every innovation, every protocol, and every decision reflected a singular truth. Progress is enduring only when aligned with human judgment, ethical responsibility, and the deliberate integration of complex systems. Elon smiled faintly. knowing that the work of today would shape the possibilities of tomorrow. Even the most meticulously planned missions are humbled by the raw power of nature. Elon watched the Mars horizon through the command center's observation viewport. The red landscape stretched endlessly, serene and unyielding. But the latest data streams carried an ominous note. A massive dust storm, far larger than anticipated, was forming near the initial habitat sites. Its trajectory intersected critical energy arrays, water extraction units, and newly deployed habitat modules. Every system, every calculation, and every human protocol was about to be tested under extreme stress. He stepped into the operations hub, where engineers and scientists monitored incoming satellite imagery and sensor data. A soft hum of machinery, distant alarms, and rapid communication bursts filled the room. Elon scanned the data with laser focus, noting subtle anomalies in wind patterns and temperature fluctuations that suggested the storm could intensify beyond current models. A mission control engineer spoke quickly. Elon, if the storm reaches peak velocity, it could compromise solar arrays and damage the habitat modules. Reducing exposure might delay ongoing operations significantly. Well, 44:7. Elon absorbed the information, pausing to integrate environmental, technical, and human considerations. We do not react blindly. Systems must adapt, habitats must be protected, and teams must remain aware and coordinated. Stability under extreme conditions is our first priority. Every decision must anticipate the storm's behavior and protect both human and technical assets. Teams moved with disciplined urgency, adjusting energy distribution, securing habitats, and running predictive simulations. Elon rotated among them, observing micro-behaviors. Hesitation, rapid problem-solving, subtle anxiety, flashes of creativity. His presence provided focus and reassurance, anchoring decision-making amid escalating pressure. Hours passed as the storm approached. Dust particles stirred, sensors tracked shifting winds, and energy arrays were recalibrated to optimize performance under limited solar input. Elon guided resource prioritization, balancing immediate protective measures with long-term operational continuity. Every system relied on integrated foresight and careful coordination. At a critical moment, a neural interface controlling habitat environmental systems signaled erratic feedback. An engineer froze. Elon intervened gently but decisively. Pause, observe, and isolate. Decisions under pressure must never compromise human oversight. Every anomaly is an opportunity to learn, adapt, and reinforce resilience. By mid-afternoon, the storm reached its peak. Dust swirled across the Martian plains, obscuring sensors and challenging every automated system. Yet habitats remained stable, energy arrays functioned at reduced capacity, and the teams continued coordinated operations under Elon's guidance. Reflection and deliberate action had transformed a potential catastrophe into a manageable crisis. Later, in solitude, Elon reviewed the day's events. Environmental unpredictability, human limitations, and technological complexity had converged, creating a crucible that tested both resilience and leadership. He documented lessons for future operations, adaptive protocols for extreme weather, enhanced predictive modeling, and systems designed to maintain human oversight under stress. Each note reinforced a principle. Sustainability and safety depend on the deliberate integration of human, technical, and environmental considerations. As the Martian night fell, Elon stepped onto the observation balcony. The faint glow of operational habitats reflected off the dust-laden sky. He whispered quietly, "Nature is a force beyond calculation. True resilience is cultivated through preparation, foresight, and the awareness of every system and every person we rely upon." A soft message from James appeared. "You've turned potential disaster into structured knowledge. That is the hallmark of adaptive leadership." Elon nodded, absorbing the affirmation. The storm had tested every element, environmental, technological, and human, and the integrated systems he had developed had held firm. Returning to the command console, Elon reviewed system logs, environmental forecasts, and human performance metrics. Every adjustment, every observation, and every decision was integrated into a continuous feedback loop, reinforcing resilience, ethical foresight, and operational stability. Night fully enveloped Mars. Habitats hummed steadily, energy arrays adapted dynamically, and satellites monitored the fading storm. Elon's gaze lingered on the horizon, understanding that interplanetary challenges would always test the limits of foresight, human awareness, and integrated systems. He whispered quietly one last time, "Every anomaly teaches the same lesson. Resilience is deliberate, leadership is integrative, and progress depends on harmonizing human, technological, and environmental systems." And it was as though Mars remained harsh, unpredictable, and unyielding, but under Elon's guidance, every system, every person, and every protocol had adapted, survived, and learned. Progress demands choices, but true leadership demands wisdom in choosing what matters most. Elon entered the Mars Operations Center early, the red landscape stretching endlessly beyond the viewport. Dust still lingered from the recent storm, coating sensors and habitats with a muted layer of Martian grit. Data streams flowed incessantly, indicating that resources, water, energy, and habitat capacity were nearing critical limits for the upcoming expansion phase. Decisions made today would define the future sustainability of the colony. A team of engineers and scientists gathered around him, tension etched on every face. "Elon," one began, "if we prioritize energy storage for the new habitats, water extraction slows. If we scale water production first, energy reserves drop. We can't fully optimize both simultaneously." Elon absorbed the dilemma, scanning live metrics, predictive models, and environmental variables. He reflected on human needs, technological dependencies, and the ethical imperatives of stewardship. The decision wasn't just operational, it was moral. Every choice affected lives, long-term survival, and the delicate ecosystem of the colony. He spoke slowly, deliberately, integrating technical insight with human awareness. "We are at a crossroads. Optimization alone is insufficient. We must weigh immediate survival, long-term sustainability, and the well-being of every colonist. We cannot prioritize efficiency at the expense of ethics or humanity." The team listened, tension giving way to reflection. Elon guided simulations, showing multiple scenarios and their cascading impacts on life support, energy systems, and water availability. Each choice illuminated trade-offs between growth, safety, and moral responsibility. Micro-behaviors emerged: hesitation, subtle nods, and flashes of insight as the team collectively grappled with the ethical dimensions of resource allocation. Hours passed. Elon's voice remained calm, precise, and purposeful. "We will prioritize water and life support systems first, ensuring every colonist can survive and thrive. Energy scaling will follow, synchronized with predictive resource management. This approach maintains integrity while safeguarding human life." A soft hum from the habitat control systems punctuated the decision. Engineers began recalibrating energy arrays, redirecting water extraction protocols, and updating predictive models. Elon moved among them, observing minute gestures, micro-reactions, and subtle signs of stress or confidence. Leadership demanded attention not just to technology, but to the human dimension of every system. Later, Elon retreated to a quiet observation deck, reviewing ethical frameworks and operational notes. The decision weighed heavily. Every resource redirected, every protocol adjusted, carried moral and practical consequences. He reflected on the principles that guided him: foresight, human-centered decision-making, ethical responsibility, and the deliberate integration of complex systems. He opened his journal, documenting lessons learned, balancing survival with growth, integrating predictive modeling with human oversight, and embedding ethical reflection into every operational decision. Each entry reinforced a guiding truth: leadership is measured not by what can be done, but by what should be done. As the Martian sun dipped below the horizon, Elon stepped onto the balcony. Habitats glowed faintly, energy arrays hummed steadily, and the colony adjusted dynamically to his decision. He whispered quietly, "The weight of choice defines progress. Every life, every system, every decision must honor both humanity and foresight." Not. A message pinged softly from James. "You've guided the colony with clarity, wisdom, and moral foresight. That is leadership beyond technology." Elon nodded, absorbing the affirmation. The day had tested not just operational skill, but ethical judgment and human-centered strategy. Night fell over Mars. Dust settled over habitats, energy systems hummed at balanced capacity, and water distribution stabilized. Elon understood that the success of the colony relied on continuous, deliberate alignment of technology, human oversight, and ethical integrity. He lingered one last time, gazing at the red horizon. Every decision carries consequence. True leadership navigates not only systems and resources, but the moral imperatives that define our humanity. The colony, resilient and adaptive, remained poised to grow under integrated systems, ethical foresight, and human-centered leadership. Elon smiled faintly, knowing that progress on Mars demanded both vision and conscience, and that the decisions made today would shape the possibilities of tomorrow. Innovation is never isolated. Every breakthrough ripples across people, systems, and responsibility. Elon entered the Mars Operations Center with a quiet intensity. Early sunlight streamed through the reinforced viewport, casting long shadows across the red landscape. Overnight, the energy research team had completed a prototype fusion solar hybrid array, a breakthrough capable of producing triple the power of existing systems with minimal resource consumption. The promise was monumental. Habitats could expand faster, water extraction could scale, and long-term sustainability seemed within reach. But breakthroughs always carried complexity. News of the innovation had already reached global partners. Political negotiations and resource-sharing agreements now hung delicately on the decision to implement the system immediately or proceed cautiously. Ethical questions emerged as well. How much power should be allocated to expansion versus long-term conservation, and who would decide? The team gathered around the prototype data interface. Elon observed micro-reactions, excitement, hesitation, subtle expressions of ethical concern, and processed them alongside technical metrics. Leadership required simultaneous awareness of technology, human behavior, and global implications. A senior engineer spoke with measured urgency. Elon, if we deploy at full capacity immediately, we can accelerate colonization timelines significantly, but resource consumption spikes, and oversight of distribution becomes more complex. That's really. Elon leaned forward, integrating simulation outputs, logistical forecasts, and ethical frameworks. Acceleration is tempting, but power is responsibility. Every watt allocated has a human, environmental, and operational impact. We proceed incrementally, integrating safeguards, monitoring outcomes, and maintaining transparency with all stakeholders. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of the decision tangible. Elon continued, "We have the opportunity to redefine Mars colonization, but the speed of deployment must never compromise ethics, human safety, or systemic resilience." By mid-morning, simulations were underway. Fusion solar arrays were tested in controlled increments, energy distribution protocols monitored, and contingency plans embedded. Elon guided the team through iterative adjustments, observing subtle signs of stress or hesitation and reinforcing confidence with deliberate clarity. Every technical adjustment was coupled with human oversight and ethical consideration. Later, a global video conference connected the Mars Operations Center with Earth-based partners. Representatives from international space agencies, private enterprises, and research institutions watched intently. Elon presented data, framed risks, and proposed incremental deployment. Negotiations were tense. Some urged rapid expansion, others warned of long-term consequences. Elon navigated with calm precision. "Breakthroughs are not zero-sum," he said. "We can scale responsibly, share insights transparently, and integrate ethical oversight at every step. True progress balances opportunity with foresight." By late afternoon, consensus emerged. Energy systems would expand gradually, predictive monitoring would govern allocation, and ethical protocols were formalized. Elon observed the subtle relief in his team, confidence returning as operational clarity replaced uncertainty. Alone later, Elon reflected in his office. A breakthrough was only as meaningful as its implementation. Ethical clarity, human-centered leadership, and systemic foresight were not optional, they were essential. He opened his journal, recording lessons. Incremental deployment, integrated human technical oversight, multi-stakeholder transparency, and anticipation of unintended consequences. Each note reinforced a principle. Innovation without responsibility is fragile. As Martian night fell, Elon stepped onto the balcony. Fusion solar arrays glimmered faintly on the horizon, satellites traced precise orbits above, and habitats hummed steadily. He whispered quietly, "Every breakthrough tests not only our intellect, but our conscience. True leadership is measured by how wisely we wield new power, not by how fast we can expand." A soft message appeared from James. "You've ensured progress without compromise. That is the rarest form of leadership." Elon absorbed the affirmation. He understood that technical breakthroughs would always create political, ethical, and operational challenges, and that resilience, foresight, and human-centered judgment would define whether humanity thrived on Mars. The starship shimmered overhead, energy systems stabilized, and Mars operations adapted dynamically. Elon lingered one final time, eyes on the horizon. Innovation must honor people, ethics, and systems. That is the foundation upon which lasting progress is built. Mars had entered a new era of energy potential. But under Elon's integrated guidance, every watt, every decision, and every breakthrough was aligned with human values, systemic foresight, and sustainable ambition. Technology can guide us, but it is human judgment that defines what is right. Elon entered the Mars Operations Center with a weight he could feel pressing on his shoulders. The fusion solar arrays were stabilizing energy systems, but a new challenge had emerged. An autonomous AI-managed habitat module had reported an anomaly in life support readings. Oxygen levels fluctuated subtly, and the AI suggested an automated rerouting of energy and resource allocations. It was capable, precise, and efficient, but Elon knew that even the smartest algorithms could misinterpret human needs or overlook unforeseen consequences. He approached the central console, eyes scanning the AI's diagnostic outputs. Engineers and habitat specialists hovered nearby, some anxious, others tense with anticipation. Elon sensed micro-reactions, subtle hesitation, raised eyebrows, a flicker of doubt, and integrated them with the technical data. Leadership demanded awareness of both human and machine. An engineer spoke carefully. "Elon, the AI recommends cutting non-critical systems to maintain oxygen levels. We could implement immediately, but it overrides human judgment and ethical oversight." Elon leaned back slightly, considering the implications. Efficiency without conscience is dangerous. Automation must serve people, not dictate them. He addressed the team with calm authority. "We will not allow a machine to make moral decisions for humans. AI can guide, optimize, and alert, but the ultimate responsibility rests with us. Every adjustment must be reviewed, every protocol validated, every risk assessed with human oversight." 19. Together, they initiated a hybrid process. The AI provided real-time simulations, predictive modeling, and risk assessments, while human engineers made final decisions on resource allocation. Oxygen, water, and energy systems were adjusted with precise care, balancing immediate safety with long-term sustainability. Elon observed every interaction, every micro-reaction, hesitation, confidence, insight, and calibrated guidance to reinforce clarity and shared responsibility. By midday, the anomaly was contained. Life support levels stabilized. AI suggestions had been carefully integrated without compromising human judgment, and predictive models indicated continued safety for all habitats. Elon reflected on the moment. Technology amplified capability, but human oversight preserved moral and operational integrity. Later, Elon convened a debrief with the team. "Automation is powerful," he explained, "but it is a tool, not a decision maker." Automation said, US, 19 decision. Every algorithm, every protocol, every system must be designed with ethics, foresight, and human responsibility in mind. The trust we place in machines cannot replace our own accountability. He recorded detailed notes for future operations. AI-assisted decision frameworks, human-in-the-loop protocols, emergency ethical oversight procedures, and adaptive monitoring for unexpected anomalies. Each note reinforced a principle central to Mars colonization. Technology is an enabler, not a substitute for human judgment and moral responsibility. As evening fell, Elon stepped onto the balcony overlooking the habitats. The red Martian terrain stretched endlessly, the fusion solar arrays glimmered faintly, and the AI-managed systems hummed steadily. He whispered quietly, "Machines extend our reach, but conscience extends our purpose. Progress depends on integrating intelligence with responsibility, efficiency with ethics, and innovation with care." A soft message appeared from James, "You've preserved both safety and integrity. That is leadership at its most consequential." Elon absorbed the affirmation. The crisis had tested technology, human oversight, and ethical clarity simultaneously, and the hybrid approach had prevailed. He lingered one final time, reflecting on the broader implications. Mars colonization was no longer just about survival or innovation, it was about the delicate interplay between human judgment, technological power, and ethical stewardship. Every decision, every protocol, and every breakthrough had to honor this balance. The starship shimmered faintly above, habitats glowed steadily below, and AI systems operated seamlessly, but Elon knew that ultimate responsibility, foresight, and ethical discernment could never be delegated. Automation guides. Humans decide. That is the foundation of enduring progress. Mars remained unpredictable and harsh, but under Elon's integrated leadership, every human, machine, and system worked in deliberate harmony, safeguarding both life and the ethical principles upon which the colony would grow.